company, everyone praised Yun Yu as a capable secretary, but only he knew how aggrieving this job really was. His boss was a top figure in American finance, the heir of the Pitmin family, also the president of an entertainment company, a top-tier alpha so perfect he didn't seem real. Yet this man, so lofty he was out of reach, ended up having an unbelievable night with him. Pitmin seemed to be deeply irritated and troubled by this as well. In this world, an omega can mark an alpha. He told Yun Yu to call in the head of security and swore he would drag out the person who had marked him. Once they found them, they were to be disposed of immediately. Hearing this, Yun Yu was so frightened that his whole body trembled. Until not long ago, he wouldn't have dared imagine something like this would fall on his own head. A few months earlier, he had only been a human shield cleaning up the messes of his playboy president. After being beaten up by the woman the president had dumped for the 990th time, the bedraggled Yun Yu could only swallow his anger and let out a low sigh. The president gave Yun Yu an arrogant once-over, showing no mercy at all, even mocking him coldly for handling things poorly. "What's this? Look at the state you're in." Yun Yu was angry but didn't dare speak up. Wasn't it just that one of Pitmin's ex-girlfriends had given him a beating after being dumped? Forcing himself to keep going, he continued to dutifully report, but Pitmin impatiently cut him off. "Hey, you even have to report something this trivial to me? You think I want to hear it?" Facing the president, who practically looked down his nose at him, Yun Yu could only weakly reply that he didn't. "Don't report this kind of thing to me again in the future." Yun Yu could hear that his mood was off and immediately lowered his voice. "Yes, I'm sorry for upsetting you. The meeting is more or less ready. Everyone is waiting for you." Yun Yu followed right behind him to the meeting, but Pitmin suddenly turned back and said coldly, "Looking like that? Do you want me to lose face in front of everyone?" Yun Yu's chest tightened. A wave of grievance surged up, and he couldn't help but talk back. "Like this? How would I make you lose face?" As soon as the words left his mouth, Yun Yu instantly froze. This little secretary who had always been obedient and docile had actually resisted him to his face. Pitmin was also stunned for a few seconds. Fortunately, Pitmin's good friend Moreau appeared and directly broke the deadlock. The pitiful little secretary in front of him had been forcibly marked by the out-of-control CEO. Even worse, after the CEO was done, he turned hostile and completely forgot about him. He even seemed like he couldn't wait to erase him from his sight altogether. After that, Yun Yu still fulfilled his duties conscientiously, blocking bullets and serving as a shield for the scumbag attacker again and again. In return, he got nothing but the man's scolding and disdain. Luckily, the scumbag attacker's friend Moreau suddenly showed up, and only then did the atmosphere barely ease. As soon as Moreau saw Yun Yu, he greeted him enthusiastically. Yet Yun Yu was clearly distant, deliberately pulling away from Moreau. The scummy top saw through his flirtatious friend's thoughts at a glance, but Yun Yu was, after all, his secretary, not someone suitable for Moreau to play with. The always careless Moreau merely smiled and said, "What do you mean play or not? My love is very serious." Yun Yu, standing to the side, was simply at a loss for words. Two alphas were pressing down right in front of him like this, and he was about to suffocate. Was this what they called birds of a feather flock together? Pitmin let out a snort of laughter. "The only person who'd enjoy playing with this guy is you." The contempt in the man's words was completely undisguised. Yun Yu turned his head away in embarrassment and stayed silent. Moreau still wore a squinting smile. "What are you talking about? Aren't you and my little brother the only two alphas in this world who don't sleep with omegas?" Pitmin was thoroughly annoyed. "Who cares whether he's an omega or not? He's a man all the same, and I don't like men." Moreau gave a low, mocking chuckle, his words barbed. "An omega man is different. Try it once and you'll know. Don't waste your chance to enjoy life." Pitmin only grew more irritated at that and directly shook off his friend's hand. No matter what, he could never go enjoy something like that. In his eyes, alphas like Moreau, who liked male omegas, were the ones who truly had something wrong with them. Hearing this, Moreau burst out laughing on the spot. "Once you've tried it, you won't say that anymore." The two of them were talking about omegas as casually as if they were discussing some product. After quite a while, they finally noticed Yun Yu standing behind them, also a male omega. "Sorry, I shouldn't have said that here. Let's talk another time." Faced with this completely insincere apology, Yun Yu couldn't even be bothered to take it seriously. The foul-mouthed scumbag attacker, however, coolly twisted the knife. "It's fine. This guy doesn't care about that. You can get close to him, just don't regret it. Of everyone I know, he's the dullest one." Yun Yu clenched his teeth and forcibly swallowed that sour ache back down, just like he had done countless times before. Instead, Moreau got even more interested. Really? Maybe in a different place, he'd turn out to be incredibly fun. After the two of them had both left, Yun Yu finally couldn't hold on anymore. His body swayed, and he nearly collapsed. He couldn't stop trembling all over. Under this kind of weather, it was already hard enough just to stay moist. He went into the restroom and put everything back in order before his body felt even slightly better. It was all because of that damn top-tier alpha, who looked down on him yet could say things like that so easily. But of all days, today, just from smelling the scent on Pitmin's body, his own body had already stopped obeying him. The little Omega secretary had a secret crush on the president. But who would have thought? The other party just happened to hate men. Back to the point. Affected by the scumbag attacker's pheromones, Yun-Yu started feeling unwell again. It looked like his breeding period was about to start, and he had to prepare in advance. After tidying up and heading out, it happened to be the lunch break. So Yun-Yu simply decided to get some proper rest first. The moment he closed his eyes, his thoughts uncontrollably drifted back to university. Back then he was still a beta, and most people would have confirmed their secondary gender in their teens. After that, very few people underwent secondary differentiation. Yet at that university polo match, he met Pitmin for the first time. Before that, he had never imagined that he himself would become an Omega. His temperament was always indifferent by nature, and he was the least suited to that kind of noisy stadium atmosphere. Listening to the people around him wildly praising the top-grade alpha, he honestly couldn't understand it at all. Suddenly, an indescribable scent curled up to the tip of his nose. He looked up. The man sat high astride a fine horse, his features handsome with a sharp edge. The narrow, long purple eyes made him seem all the more mysterious and noble. Yun-Yu was completely stunned. Is he really human? How can someone be this good-looking? It was also from this moment on that Yun-Yu finally understood why everyone would go crazy. Seeing him smile at someone else, his heart would lose control with jealousy. This must be what that feeling is like. From the moment the match began, Yun-Yu's gaze could no longer be pulled back. That man's lithe figure galloping across the field was seared fiercely into his mind, unconsciously drawing him in. His heartbeat grew so restless it was about to drown out the noise of the scene. But just then, an accident still happened. A polo ball that flew out of bounds whooshed straight toward Yun-Yu's side, right at that life-or-death instant. The ball was suddenly struck aside with force by a mallet that shot out. The one who saved him turned out to be Pitmin. Yet when Pitmin took that hit head-on, his balance wavered, and he fell straight off the horse. Afterward, with his heart in a panic, Yun-Yu still went to the infirmary. Pitmin was injured because of him, and Yun-Yu only wanted to confirm, was he actually doing any better? Carrying a body full of unease, he pushed the door open and saw Pitmin lying on the bed with his eyes closed, his head still wrapped in gauze. Guilt surged up all at once. Was he badly hurt? Would it leave a scar on his face? Just then, the man who had been unconscious suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze locking straight onto him, and Yun-Yu froze on the spot in fright. But the first thing the man said was actually out of concern for Yun-Yu. "You're not hurt, are you?" He actually still remembered Yun-Yu. Yun-Yu's face grew hot. Even his breathing turned a bit unnatural. He actually still remembered Yun-Yu. Yun-Yu's embarrassment burned even hotter. Right after that, the man reached a hand out toward him. Yun-Yu hesitated for a moment, but still extended his hand. The next second, however, Pitmin boldly yanked him straight into his arms. He buried his head against Yun-Yu's slender neck, as if confirming something. "You're a beta?" Yun-Yu, still dazed, nodded. The man let out a low laugh, his tone hard to read. "Let me see what you can do." Yun-Yu had secretly loved Pitmin for many years, only to be forcibly differentiated from a beta into an Omega. He had watched with his own eyes as the scumbag Gong's women came and went, one after another. Yet even though Pitmin used Yun-Yu as a breakup shield every time, he had never once truly looked at him. Everything still has to start from that fateful encounter back in college. Pitmin fell off his horse in order to save Yun-Yu, and Yun-Yu hurried to the infirmary to see him. But the next second, the man suddenly yanked him into his arms, pulled out a deck of cards, and actually wanted to play poker. Just as the atmosphere was heating up, the man suddenly shoved him away. In that startled shout, there was a suppressed fury. "You're a guy!" Right after that, he wiped the corner of his lips with a look of pure disgust. The air turned cold in an instant, and his eyes were stained with a blinding crimson gold. "Damn it! What on earth did you do to me?" The oppressive force of a supreme alpha surged over like a tide, and Yun-Yu was so shaken he couldn't form a complete sound. Clearly the one who lit the fire first was him, so how did it suddenly become like this? And his eye color had even changed. Yun-Yu hesitated, wanting to run, because the man kept glancing left and right as if searching for something, and that made his heart grow colder bit by bit. Sure enough, in the next second Pitmin gripped the cue stick and walked toward him step by step. That day Yun-Yu ran for his life, and finally collapsed unconscious right at his own doorstep. When he woke up the next day, he was already in the hospital. The doctor said he had been affected by the pheromones of a supreme alpha and had turned into an omega, and could only rely on medication for treatment. From then on, Pitmin barged into his life, and everything was completely rewritten. Yet when they met again years later in a work setting, Pitmin stated very clearly that he did not like men, and he didn't remember Yun-Yu at all. Pulling himself out of the memories, Yun-Yu slowly woke up. He had dreamed of the past again, so annoying. He pushed open the door. The president had just come out as the meeting ended and asked him how the next part of the schedule should be arranged. Of course, Yun-Yu understood what Pitmin meant. It has been cancelled for you. This answer made the president very satisfied. Pretty good at reading people's expressions. Not bad. Yun-Yu said respectfully, "Thank you for the compliment." The president turned around and added, "For this weekend's party, assign more security personnel." Moreau heard them mention the party, and his expression changed slightly. "That party, Yun-Yu, are you coming too?" Yun-Yu answered calmly, "The party needs a person in charge. Same as usual, I'll be there as well." But Moreau seemed to be thinking of something else and slowly said, "Is that so? You usually carry medicine with you, right? And a pheromone suppressant." Of course. Then that's fine. See you at the party, Yun-Yu. If you see something you shouldn't, don't be too surprised. Leaving behind this ambiguous remark, Moreau did not explain further, turned around, and left. Because you're a man, you don't even have the qualification to stand by his side. Once that topic closed, Yun-Yu, as the person in charge of the party, boarded that luxury yacht. This party was almost extravagantly luxurious to the point of exaggeration. Today's guests all seemed to be top-tier alphas. Yun-Yu was even more puzzled. Wasn't this supposed to be a small party? How come all of Pitmin's friends are top-tier alphas? At this moment, out of the corner of his eye, he happened to catch sight of Moreau behind him, and Yun-Yu still greeted him politely. "Come in. Pitmin will be here within 15 minutes. You can go in and have some fun first," Moreau said with a smile. "I was planning to do just that." "Oh, right. There's something I should say up front. I've already reminded you guys about today's party, whether it's you or Pitmin." Halfway through his sentence, Moreau inexplicably turned around and walked off. Yun-Yu was even more baffled by him, completely unable to understand what Moreau was trying to say. Just as he was thinking how strange it was, Pitmin made a glamorous entrance with his beautiful female companion. He changed partners again. A sharp pain stabbed through Yun-Yu's chest, but he still forced himself to smile, not forgetting the propriety of a secretary. "Welcome, Mr. Pitmin. There are still a few guests who haven't arrived yet. Miss Ibari, you look even more beautiful today. As per your previous instructions, security has been reinforced, and the party is proceeding as normal." As he spoke, Yun-Yu's gaze accidentally brushed over Pitmin's sexy Adam's apple. His cheeks flushed red in an instant. Pitmin didn't even spare him a glance. Only when he brushed past did he casually toss out, "Well done." With that, he slipped an arm around the beauty beside him, smiling and chatting as he walked away. Yun-Yu watched their retreating backs, his expression darkening, a trace of envy flashing in his eyes. Because Yun-Yu was a man, he didn't even have the qualification to stand by Pitmin's side. Unexpectedly, Pitmin's female companion suddenly turned back and saw Yun-Yu's expression with absolute clarity. Yun-Yu tilted his head slightly. Had she noticed? But the party was still going on. And yet Yun-Yu slowly realized this was not an ordinary party at all. The truly special thing was, beside every top alpha stood a partner, and most of those partners were omegas. But before long, there were fewer and fewer people at the party. Yun-Yu thought he had made a scheduling mistake, but the moment he stepped into the first-class cabin corridor, the strong pheromones sent rushed at him and made him dizzy. To be safe, he had clearly taken a double dose of medicine. So how could this still be happening? That familiar scent burrowed into his nose again, like Pitmin's pheromones. Yun-Yu followed the trail of the smell, and the farther he went, the more charged the air became. Now Yun-Yu finally understood why everyone had disappeared from the party. But just as he was about to turn and leave, a sharp female voice exploded behind him. "Did you bring it? Hey, where are you going?" The more Yun-Yu listened, the more familiar it sounded. The next second, the person grew even more impatient. "Can't you hear me talking? Where are you going? Since you're here, hand it over." His feelings were cruelly exposed by someone else, then personally torn to shreds by the person he cared about most and ground underfoot. Again and again he endured until he went numb. How much longer could he hold on to this love? Following the voice, Yun-Yu heard the president's new female companion calling as if she were calling to him. He still turned back politely, nodded, and greeted her. But as soon as the woman opened her mouth, she was aggressive, staring at him and asking why he came empty-handed. Where was the champagne? She was clearly treating Yun-yu as a waiter. The room was obviously supposed to be already stocked, yet the woman suddenly exploded. "Are you stupid? It's because it's not enough that I told you to bring another bottle. You came empty-handed. What on earth are you standing here for?" The smell in the air was getting stronger and stronger, and Yun-yu forced himself to hold his body up, yet still said respectfully, "I'm sorry. I'll go get it right away." He had just turned around when the woman called him back again. Yun-yu paused for a few seconds, still pushed down the discomfort, and asked in a low voice, "What else do you need?" The woman stepped closer with a clatter in her 30-centimeter high heels, towering over him as she pressed him. "I'm talking about you. What are you thinking? Why did you come here?" Yun-yu couldn't understand what she meant. The woman, however, thought he was playing dumb, and her words grew nastier and nastier. "Drop the act. You look just like some host club gigolo. You're an omega, aren't you? I just saw it. You were staring blankly at Pitmin. Hilarious. You were fantasizing about something, weren't you?" Yun-yu hadn't expected that he would really be seen through, so he explained that he had come here only to provide services to guests who needed them. But the woman wouldn't listen at all and started a rude quarrel with Yun-yu. Just then, Pitmin finally came back. "What are you grabbing my secretary for?" Ibari immediately went on the offensive, saying that Yun-yu had bad intentions here. She pointed at Yun-yu, anxiously trying to make the statement absolute to force Pitmin to believe her. "Look, he came empty-handed. He just wants to seduce you. You're about to enter your breeding period. He's getting ready to make a move on you. And he even dares to lie to me." Pitmin only felt it was absurd. "He's just my secretary. Do you think I would have a relationship with a man?" "I'm speechless." But he's an omega." Ibari still wanted to argue, but Pitmin simply shot her a cold glance. "Don't forget, he's a man. That has nothing to do with whether he's an omega or not. In my view, it's impossible he came all the way here just to get into bed with me. Isn't that right, Yun-yu?" "Why yes, I just came to do the rounds and see if the guests needed anything." Since things had reached this point, Pitmin couldn't be bothered to continue such a pointless topic and urged Ibari to go into the room first. He then turned his head and said to Yun-yu, "I would never sleep with a man. And Yun-yu, you know what your position is, right?" Yun-yu's face turned a few shades paler. Of course. The person actually responsible for delivering the champagne finally showed up, dragging his feet. This time Ibari was completely choked off. She could only act coquettish as she took the man's arm and went into the room. Yun-yu, his expression vacant, felt his steps floating. His body swayed, and he almost collapsed. But he still forced himself to hold on and instructed the waiter to go ask if Pitmin needed anything else. He staggered into the elevator, and only then did it hit him. He had to use a suppressant immediately. As soon as the elevator doors opened, the scene before his eyes only made his dizziness worse. The air was filled with such a thick, bitter pheromone scent that it trapped him completely, leaving him no way out. This omega, who was right in the middle of his breeding period, had actually been targeted by a group of strong alphas. Yun-yu gritted his teeth, wanting to escape from this room packed with alphas. But as the pheromones pressed down on him, his brain seemed to short-circuit, completely refusing to obey. Just as he staggered and was about to collapse, a man who looked kind-hearted steadied him by the shoulders and asked in a low voice, "You're Pitmin's secretary, right?" Simple-minded Yun-yu was still thinking from the perspective of a manager, only assuming the other party had come seeking help. He never expected the man to suddenly lean in close and spit out a line that sent his heartbeat out of control. "So you're an omega." The next second, with a loud bang, Yun-yu was violently forced down onto the floor. The little dark-skinned guy nearby heard the commotion and came over as well. The moment Yun-yu sensed danger, he tried to get up with trembling hands, but his whole body had gone limp, and he couldn't muster any strength at all. At this moment, more alphas also gathered around, their eyes locking onto him with ill intent. They were both shocked and delighted that Yun-yu was an omega, pointing at him, sizing him up and picking over him like he was merchandise. After all, with such a beautiful omega by his side, there's no way Pitmin could feel nothing at all, especially when Yun-yu even had a face like a male host. The men even maliciously guessed that the reason Yun-yu came here was to play cards with them, and by the way, enjoy this tempting omega right in front of them. The three of them had long since been unable to suppress their urges, thinking to themselves, "Pitmin even brought a female companion today, and he always says he doesn't like men," so they felt even bolder. Frightened, Yun-yu jumped up and turned around to run. The next second, however, a large hand yanked him back by force. They even started openly discussing the dealing order right in front of Yun-yu. The dark-skinned man looked utterly scornful. "Are you kidding me? We're still talking about taking turns now? Am I supposed to just stand here on the side, picking my teeth with a toothpick?" The brown-haired man still had some misgivings. No matter what, he's still Pitmin's secretary. What if something really happens? But another man insisted you can't play cards short of a fourth player. Someone suggested, then just give him 2 toothpicks to chew on. The dark-skinned man was instantly annoyed. How long are we going to drag this out? It's not like we're in a meeting. Listening to this horrifying conversation, Yun-Yu felt a chill in his heart. If he stayed any longer, something terrible was bound to happen. He had to leave immediately. But before he could even take a step, his scalp prickled with sharp pain as a huge force clamped down on him, making it impossible for him to escape. The pretty little secretary almost couldn't even protect his last shred of bottom line. Yet the scummy top actually forced the little secretary to go apologize to the people who tried to assault him, all because they were guests that he had personally invited. In a twist, Yun-Yu, who had mistakenly wandered into an alpha entertainment venue, was forced to sit at the table and join the card game. Pushed to his limit in order to protect himself, Yun-Yu finally fought back head-on. A few hours later, the rescued Yun-Yu finally woke up, and his boss Pitmin was sitting right beside him. Pitmin asked him in a low voice, what exactly happened? At first, Yun-Yu thought Pitmin already knew the truth and just wanted to hear his explanation. So he forced down his emotions and said tactfully, I'm sorry, I should have been more careful. But in the next second, Pitmin's words froze him on the spot. He wanted a toothpick, so why didn't you just take it for him? Why did you have to do that? Are you out of your mind or something? Such a trivial matter, and you turned it into such an ugly mess. Do you have any idea he was almost crippled because of you? He still has to stay in the hospital for a long time. I really don't know what's going on in that head of yours. Yun-Yu tried desperately to explain what had happened, but Pitmin simply didn't care. So what? Is this really that serious? Aren't you Omegas all like this? Saying you don't like it with your mouth, but once it's in, you love it to death. What is wrong with you? Why pretend? I thought you would be honest with yourself, but you've disappointed me completely. I even thought you were an all-round perfect secretary. Yun-Yu's hands clenched the hem of his clothes tightly. He should have known long ago that Pitmin was this kind of person. Yet he had actually deluded himself into thinking this man would care about his feelings. And Pitmin was still there, acting all high and mighty, going on and on. Anyway, I'll pay the medical expenses for you, and you go to the hospital to Apollo. I'm resigning. Yun-Yu's words clearly made Pitmin freeze for a moment. Today's party was ruined by me, and I apologize to you. Since you're paying my medical expenses, I no longer have any attachments, so I'll leave. Yun-Yu knew very clearly what it meant to say these words, but he also understood that if this matter was treated as just his problem, then he could only clean it up himself. If this kind of secretary was, in Pitmin's eyes, nothing more than a capable secretary, then he should resign as well. He walked up to the man, dragging his damaged body, and still bent at the waist to bow. Thank you for your guidance during this time. I'll be going now. Yun-Yu was very clear-headed and also knew he should cut his losses in time. He had once tried desperately hard to like someone. Yet in the end, he discovered that all of it had just been a waste of effort. The scumbag top hadn't had a heart at all. After going back, he didn't take a single step out of the house, and the food at home was quickly eaten up. It definitely couldn't go on like this. He grabbed his car keys, but stopped at the doorway. Thinking of that nightmare-like encounter, Yun-Yu still felt lingering fear even now. It's fine, there should not be any more problems. Look, this top-tier alpha CEO actually breaks into the little secretary's home in the middle of the night. A few days ago, Yun-Yu had just seen the scumbag top's true colors and, in a fit of rage, resigned. He was, after all, the universally acknowledged all-rounder secretary in the company. Colleague Ima, of course, couldn't understand why he suddenly quit. Afraid that Ima would overthink it, Yun-Yu could only smile and make a joke. If Mr. Pitmin is willing to give me 5% of the entertainment company's shares, I'll consider going back. That's what he says, but he knows perfectly well that this is absolutely impossible, because he never intended to go back in the first place. He had just stuffed the things he bought into the trunk when his phone suddenly rang. As soon as the call connected, there was a burst of piercing abuse. It took Yun-Yu a few seconds to figure out who the caller was. It was Mr. Pitmin's ex-girlfriend he had just dumped, Ms. Kitu. On the other end of the line, Kitu was still furiously cursing because Pitmin had found a new partner. What Yun-Yu couldn't understand even more was this. Back then, Ms. Kitu had clearly already signed the amicable breakup agreement. Naturally, she could no longer interfere in Pitmin's private life. Kitu put it very bluntly. What she was obsessed with was never the new partner, but the person at Pitmin's side, who just happened to be the person she hated the most. Yun-Yu let out a helpless sigh. This was a favor he really couldn't do. What's more, he had already resigned. On the other end of the line, Kitu's tone suddenly became very solemn, with a hint of panic. Then, what do I do about this? Who should I look for? Yun-Yu told her to call the company directly. There should still be staff there. Kitu hastily apologized for her earlier rudeness, and the next second she hung up. This was the first time since Yeonyu stopped being a secretary that he felt he was being treated as a human being. However, Ima was probably going to have a headache. Right now, Miss Kitu was very likely calling her. On the way home, Yeonyu's body once again started to feel unwell from time to time. Thinking of that man who had tried to attack him, who might jump out from some corner at any moment, he only wanted to leave quickly, to escape as fast as he could. Even these past few nights, he has had to rely on medicine just to barely fall asleep. Tonight he tossed and turned for a long time and was just about to take the medicine when the doorbell suddenly rang. Yeonyu had just gotten up when the person outside the door grew anxious, raising a hand to bang on the door with a loud clatter. The rapid knocking on the door instantly tightened Yeonyu's heart. Could it be that they had come to take revenge on him? Hurry up and open the door before I smash it to pieces. How could it be Pitmin's voice? Yeonyu was still dazed, not knowing where to put his hands and feet, yet he still hurriedly opened the door. As soon as the door opened, that familiar handsome face instantly enlarged, suddenly pressing close. The arrogant scumbag top broke into the little secretary's home in the middle of the night, and the first thing out of his mouth was, he wanted to hire him back. Picking up from there, Pitmin had come to find Yeonyu in the middle of the night, and the moment he stepped inside, he started looking around. Your place is like this? Is this the entryway? Where's the living room? Yeonyu was made a bit dizzy by the scent of his pheromones and stared blankly for quite a while before coming back to himself. The place you just walked into is the entryway, and this is the living room. Pitmin casually picked a spot and sat down, his tone as cold as ice. Why do you live in a place that looks like a warehouse? Yeonyu shot back. With the salary you pay me, this is the only kind of place I can afford. Yeonyu almost blurted out something like, sorry, the place is so small. His old habits were terrifying. He forced down that instinct and asked, coming this late, what exactly do you want? At that, a hint of resentment appeared in Pitmin's gaze toward Yeonyu. It was you, right? The one who called Kitu. Only then did Yeonyu understand the trouble had come from that phone call. Pitmin rubbed his forehead and sighed. It's my first time seeing women fight, and they were fighting like dogs. The more Yeonyu listened, the more curious he became about what had happened. He thought he would just check the news more later, and he should find out soon enough. He still cautiously asked Pitmin, so you were scared of watching women fight, and that's why you hid out at my place? The man's gaze toward him instantly turned sharp. Yeonyu immediately realized he had said the wrong thing. He gave a light cough to try to cover up the awkwardness. Then he heard the man speak in all seriousness. 5% is not happening. Before Yeonyu could wrap his head around it, Pitmin continued. Didn't you ask for 5% of the entertainment company's shares? Ima told me that as long as this condition was met, you would come back. But that condition is something I can't give. Change it to something else. Yeonyu laid his cards on the table and said he had only been talking casually and had never intended to go back. What if I don't want to? As if he had just heard some sort of joke, Pitmin let out a low pft of a laugh. Was this a challenge to his capabilities? Yeonyu just couldn't stand the president's high and mighty attitude, so he went straight in for another stab. You can't even put up 5% of the shares, so what is there left to negotiate? In order to save face, Pitmin simply threw down a ruthless offer. I'll give you 20% in dry shares. Then he asked what else Yeonyu wanted, telling him to just name it. Yeonyu clenched his teeth. What he was actually thinking was, I want you as well, but he only dared to keep that to himself. If he said it out loud, he was afraid he'd be beaten to death on the spot. His lips trembled, and he forced himself to say, I want that. Pitmin lifted his eyelids a little. Which one? This president, in order to drag his little secretary back to his side, actually barged into the secretary's home in the middle of the night. Who could have known he'd get hooked by the other's pheromones and lose control? Leaning in to kiss him, back to the point. Right then and there, Yeonyu laid down his terms. If he wanted to rehire him, fine, but first he had to rein in that damn pheromone scent. As for the shares, that had just been a joke and should be treated like he'd never said it. Pitmin clearly hadn't expected the condition to be so simple. Just that? Yeonyu turned his head and glared at him fiercely. How could that be all? It had finally come around to his turn to flip the script. Of course he was going to go at it hard and punish the scumbag top. First, the employment contract must be renewed every year. Second, give him a raise on his annual salary. After all, he didn't just handle company matters, he also had to clean up the scumbag top's complete mess of a private life, and it had worn him down badly both mentally and financially. The little secretary's resentment pressed down so heavily it was hard to breathe. The president who had been so imposing just moments ago now couldn't get a single word out. Yeonyu also added a third request. If you ever want to throw that kind of party again, you must tell me the purpose in advance. At that time, I'll hire a separate person in charge of the party, and I just won't attend. These 3 are all I want. Pitmin asked. Is that all? Yeonyu nodded, but Pitmin frowned. The other party was asking for too little, which only made him more uneasy. In his view, this meant the responsibility he was taking on still wasn't enough. As expected, domineering CEOs are really hard to understand as a species. Yeonyu didn't care about any of that. He only hoped that from now on, the other party would think about his feelings before doing things. Pitmin stroked his chin, as if confirming something. So in other words, as long as something doesn't suit you, you'll get ready to resign again? Yeonyu shrugged. There's nothing in this world that never changes. After starting work again, he would act the same way. He was also, in effect, reminding the scumbag Gong, you'd better cherish what you have now. The man suddenly burst out laughing. Yeonyu's cheeks uncontrollably flushed red. It was the first time he had seen the man smiling at him so happily. The more he thought about it, the more flustered he became, and he completely zoned out. He didn't even hear it when Pitmin called his name. By the time he looked up again, the man was already standing right in front of him, only a finger's width away. Pitmin asked him what was wrong, whether he felt unwell anywhere. There was no way you could tell the truth. That would be way too embarrassing. It's nothing, I'm fine. But your face is very red. Pitmin leaned in closer and closer. The next second, the light in the man's eyes suddenly darkened. He actually went straight in and kissed his lips. If this is a dream, I hope I never wake up. Yeonyu, an Omega, has had a secret crush on the president for many years, but the man has always treated his feelings as if they didn't exist. It wasn't until after he resigned that the president finally took the initiative to come to him. But what on earth was that out-of-nowhere kiss, and that cloyingly sweet pheromone scent supposed to mean? On the balcony, the atmosphere between the two of them grew deeper and deeper. Yeonyu was so flustered his hands were trembling, and he instinctively wanted to grab onto something. But he was also afraid that if he moved even a little, he would break the spell. What was he supposed to do? When he was on the verge of suffocating, Pitmin finally let him go. Yeonyu's heart was pounding in chaos. He had no idea what had just happened. What kind of feelings was Pitmin harboring to do something like this? The man in front of him had very dark irises, as if he were seeing right through him from head to toe. He murmured in a low voice, "Pheromones." Yeonyu froze, and before he had time to speak, the man frowned again. "Get rid of that smell on yourself first before we talk." With that, the man turned his face away coldly and walked off. Only Yeonyu was left collapsing weakly to the ground. Was it really just because of the pheromones? But that expression he had just now, no matter how he thought about it, something felt off. Could it be that he had misread it? When he returned to the company the next day, Yeonyu was enthusiastically surrounded and welcomed by a group of colleagues. After all, throughout the entire company, other than him, no one could tolerate the president's foul temper. With his ears burning red, Yeonyu apologized. "You've all worked hard during this time. I'll be counting on you again from now on." Ima leaned in to gossip, saying that Kitu and Ibiri had turned the banquet into a complete mess. Yeonyu became even more curious. How did it end up becoming a fight, exactly? And did Pitmin really come to see him because of that incident? Just then, Ima caught sight of the wound on his lips and stared, shocked, at those lips that looked like they'd been fiercely bitten. "Oh my, what happened to your lips?" Yeonyu hurriedly covered them in a panic. "It's nothing. I just hurt them by accident." Simple-minded Ima didn't think much of it and handed Yeonyu the ointment she carried with her. "Put this on first. If you leave it alone, the wound will just split wider and wider." Yeonyu thanked her, but just held the ointment in a daze. No one would understand, but he couldn't help hoping this wound would stay a little longer. As if it were a mark left personally by Pitmin, belonging only to him. The flirtatious CEO, who was rumored never to touch men, had actually kissed his own Omega secretary. Even if Pitmin claimed it was all because of the pheromones, Yeonyu still caught a hint of something off in his expression, and it churned up the heart of Yeonyu, who had already had a secret crush on the CEO, until it grew hot. But the fantasy was quickly shattered the very first day he was reinstated. That man told him to go find new women for the party. Absent-mindedly, Yeonyu answered, "Got it." After leaving the office, he kept replaying last night's kiss over and over, so it really was only because of the pheromones that he kissed him, right? Something like that would never happen a second time. After that, everything stayed the same for another month. If there was any difference at all, it was that Pitmin started changing lovers faster and faster. In other words, not only did Yeonyu have to rack his brains to immediately find him a new lover, he also had to clean up his ex-girlfriends for him. The dumped women came for revenge, and his workload doubled along with it. Today, Yeonyu had to break up with chinesebl on behalf of the president. As he walked to the door, he still couldn't help regretting it. If he had known it would be like this, he should have asked for company shares back then. This job was way too exhausting, but he hadn't expected that this time he would stumble upon a shocking discovery. The party was in full swing over here when Ho-tae-go, the security captain in charge of maintaining order, suddenly heard someone calling him. When he saw that it was Yun-yu, he immediately strode over to him. "Yun-yu, what are you doing here?" But Yun-yu pulled out his phone and said, panting, "I just went to look for Miss thaibl and found this in her room. I've already taken a photo of it." Ho-tae-go was clearly taken aback. "A Gene Bank commission certificate? What's that?" Yun-yu hurriedly explained. "So it turns out thaibl stole Pitmin's little tadpoles. If we don't take care of this right away." Before he could finish, Ho-tae-go calmly cut him off. "I understand. I'll go investigate immediately. You go report to Mr. Pitmin first. Shouldn't this be dealt with immediately? If there are already under-the-table dealings, or if..." "No." Yun-yu froze for a moment. He couldn't understand how Ho-tae-go could still be so calm. "Don't you get it yet? The genes of an ultra-elite alpha must be activated through artificial means. Empty genes are useless on their own. That's why Mr. Pitmin can be so careless. Unless he happens to be in a breeding period. But that's rare, since things usually don't stay in the body. Anyway, it's enough that you know this much." Yun-yu had always thought Pitmin released pheromones just to show off the superiority of an ultra-elite alpha, but it turned out that wasn't it at all. Knowing that Yun-yu was an omega, Ho-tae-go advised him to go back first and leave the rest to Ho-tae-go. Catching a whiff of the pheromones lingering from the party, Yun-yu immediately quickened his pace and headed back. As soon as he looked back, a blinding white light suddenly swept across, stabbing his eyes with pain. It was a car's headlights. The person sitting inside was the same guy who had tried to hurt him last time. The next second, that car sped past, skimming right by his side. Yun-yu collapsed to the ground, trembling all over. Even though the person in the car hadn't seen him, those painful memories still surged up all at once as the car drove away, pinning him entirely to the spot so he couldn't move at all. The poor little secretary curled up under his blanket, shaking uncontrollably. Just a few hours ago, he had run into that rich second-generation heir who had once tried to forcibly possess him. After barely escaping, he'd thought he was fine, that it had all just been a terrible nightmare. But when that person appeared again, he finally understood. It hadn't been like that at all. The next day, Yun-yu's car hadn't even reached the company. The extreme mental strain had pushed him almost to his limit. He closed his eyes, trying desperately to suppress the anxiety and fear in his heart, but it was completely useless. Just then, someone suddenly banged hard on his car window, startling him so much that his whole body jerked. Yun-yu lifted his head to look up, trembling with fear. His eyes rimmed red as if he were about to cry in the very next second. Fortunately, the person who came was no one else but his direct superior, Pitmin. "What are you doing?" As soon as the words fell, the irritable Pitmin knocked on the car window hard twice more. "Hurry up and open the door. Get out here." Supporting himself on the car door, Yun-yu staggered out of the car. "I'm sorry, I can't drive." Before he could finish speaking, his whole body collapsed downward. When he woke up again, that familiar scent was once more lingering at the tip of his nose. He had been brought into Pitmin's car. The man held a lollipop elegantly between his lips and spoke unhurriedly. "You're finally awake. Instead of going to work, you locked yourself in the car and passed out? Tell me, what's the problem this time?" Thinking of what Pitmin had said last time, Yun-yu's voice faltered for a moment. But even if he was going to hear that kind of remark again, he still had to say it. "There seems to be something wrong with my mental state. I want to get psychological counseling." What he didn't expect was that this usually ice-cold boss actually called someone directly and had a doctor come over. A few minutes later, Pitmin's private doctor was already sitting in front of him. If it weren't for the car door still being open, being alone with another man in such a cramped space would really make Yun-yu break down. The doctor determined that he most likely had panic disorder and asked if he had ever had an episode before. Yun-yu shook his head. The doctor then patiently pressed on, "What do you think is the reason? What exactly has happened to you?" That question instantly stirred up Yun-yu's most terrifying memories, and his breathing suddenly went out of control. Seeing his reaction, the doctor immediately tried to calm him. Only after Yun-yu's breathing slowly steadied did he tell him everything. The doctor told him to get a good rest first, and that as for the rest, he would report it to Pitmin. Pitmin heard the reason from the doctor. Back in the car, he asked Yun-yu what he planned to do. Yun-yu felt that he could no longer continue working. Rather than taking unpaid leave, it would be better to resign outright. "The contract period isn't over yet. Do you want to pay the penalty fee?" Yun-yu's voice faltered. He knew that amount of money was terrifyingly large, as long as Pitmin was willing to give him time. But faced with this little secretary who still hadn't recovered, the man's expression darkened. I need you. After what happened last time, when Yunyu heard this kind of line again, he no longer expected anything from it. He knew very well that what the man needed was only a capable secretary, not Yunyu as a person. He still tried to go on persuading the man to agree to let him resign. His illness left him unable to do anything. He had to go home, go back there. In order to keep them from finding him, Yunyu could only hide. As long as he didn't go out, it would be fine. But his body started convulsing uncontrollably again. Yunyu was so scared that his whole body was trembling, his mind a complete mess. Just then, a whiff of fragrance suddenly flooded his nose, and he snapped awake. While he was still wondering about it, the man's eyes suddenly turned gold. The man directly clasped the back of Yunyu's neck and pulled him into his arms. This president claims he doesn't like men, yet time and again he forces his little secretary to go get PCR tests. Yunyu had finally managed to catch his breath and was just about to speak. Who would have thought? The president's first words were to tell Yunyu to go to his place. Yunyu could hardly believe what he had just heard. But the president spoke with absolute certainty. Yes, there's nowhere in this world safer than my home. Doesn't that solve the problem? The doctor had also said just now that the way to overcome fear is to expose that fear to the air. Your fear is your pheromones. What the president said wasn't entirely unreasonable, but Yunyu still couldn't figure it out. Why would a president who is always arrogant and hates trouble want to help him? The president said calmly, compared to 5% of the shares, this is a bargain. So, until I get better, do you plan to keep releasing your pheromones nonstop? Is that not okay? Then, why did you kiss me? The president said he was only following the method the doctor had taught. The fastest way to inject it is to establish a bond. Pitmin used a kiss to replace that step. But will that really work? Indeed, his breathing became a bit steadier, and his mind also cleared up a little. However, Yunyu felt even more uneasy. He seemed to react only to Pitmin's pheromones. Pitmin didn't mind at all, merely saying coolly, "You should know very well that I won't touch you." These words stabbed into Yunyu's heart like a needle. After receiving treatment from the psychologist, could he really return to normal? Under the same roof, would he still be able to hide his true feelings? Worse still, the dosage of the medication would have to be increased compared to usual. What if there were side effects and he went insane? In that case, he'd rather just become infertile. But surely he wouldn't be unlucky enough to get both, right? The more Yunyu thought about it, the more he fell apart. In the end, he compromised and nodded. "Thank you for taking care of me. I'll keep it a secret that you made out with a man twice." After listening, Pitmin raised his eyebrows slightly. "This face of yours is exactly my type. If you were a woman, I would have gone to bed with you long ago." Yunyu was slightly stunned, and just then the car happened to stop at their destination. Afraid that he wouldn't be able to get out of the car, Pitmin let him inhale a bit more pheromones. When Yunyu opened his eyes again, he realized he was actually in an exquisite and luxurious room. A handsome middle-aged man who looked like a butler pushed the door open and came in. He was Pitmin's butler. Could it be he was now in Pitmin's villa? After waiting for so long, the little secretary was finally going to live together with the domineering CEO. Yunyu moved into the president's luxurious grand villa, and Pitmin's butler took meticulous care of him. The butler told Yunyu that he could speak up whenever he needed anything. After muddle-headedly moving in, Yunyu really did seem to get much better. When the doctor came by again for a consultation, he was already able to steady his breathing and talk to people calmly. The doctor asked him how long he had been working as a secretary. Yunyu thought for a moment and said, "About a little over 2 years." Then, besides Mr. Pitmin, have you ever met any other top-tier alphas? Yunyu said that apart from exchanging greetings, he had hardly ever interacted with them. The doctor understood immediately. "Aha, so you know almost nothing about top-tier alphas." "Well, it's true that ordinary people do find it very hard to come into contact with them." Yunyu tilted his head in curiosity. He only heard the doctor continue murmuring softly, "Top-tier alphas have extremely strong immunity, so they almost never get sick, and even if they are injured, they heal very quickly. There are very few drugs that can truly harm them." Even as slow as he was, Yunyu understood that this was the effect of pheromones. Top-tier alpha pheromones were truly terrifying. But nothing in this world can be all benefits. The stronger the pheromones, the more they become a double-edged sword. Once they pile up to a certain level, they turn into poison. The doctor lightly tapped his temple with a finger and said with a squinting smile, "This will break. Will they go mad or something else? Unless all the pheromones are expelled, their consciousness will not return. So, to prevent this from happening, they usually discharge a portion of their pheromones in advance. Otherwise, the amount that builds up in daily life, plus the pheromones during the breeding period, the mind will lose control and be completely taken over by pheromones." Hearing this, Yunyu suddenly seemed to remember something, and his mood instantly became very complicated. What will I become like then? The doctor gave a lazy smile. In that instant, you'll completely lose consciousness. I've heard that even if there's a dog in front of you, you'll still, without any hesitation, just, at that moment the butler suddenly coughed. And only then did Yun-Yu snap back from those terrifying associations. Today's consultation was clearly already over, yet Yun-Yu was still sitting on the sofa, his eyes empty. Because of health reasons, Pitmin had been changing assistants all the time, but he had never treated Yun-Yu as that kind of person. Yet the doctor's words made Yun-Yu realize Pitmin might have done that kind of thing with him simply because of the pheromones of a top-tier superior alpha. Yun-Yu choked back a sob, but the man suddenly appeared behind him. What's wrong? Pitmin stared at him and asked, Why are you crying? Yun-Yu retorted, I'm not crying. Rough fingertips brushed the reddened corners of Yun-Yu's eyes, and the man coolly exposed his lie. Then why are your eyes red? Yun-Yu had no choice but to vaguely say that he was a bit tired, but in the next second his legs went weak and he swayed as he fell into the man's arms. Pitmin was both angry and helpless. Just when would his little secretary finally get used to his scent? Yun-Yu mumbled in a daze. The doctor said, I'm already much better. As soon as the words fell, the man's tall figure suddenly moved. He flipped him over and pinned him down. The man in front of him was clearly someone with whom he had shared the most intimate of relationships, yet he had ruthlessly pushed him away again and again. Pitmin asked displeasedly where his scent had gone, and Yun-Yu's heart tightened inexplicably, a trace of guilt welling up. Because I took medicine. The dosage is much higher than before. Pitmin lifted his eyes and pressed. Since when? Yun-Yu could only honestly explain everything. This also made Pitmin recall what had happened last time. It's been gone since then? Yun-Yu didn't understand why Pitmin was reacting so strongly, but he still nodded, giving him a definite answer. Pitmin looked a bit upset and raised his hand to rub his hair. He didn't say anything, just turned around and left. Yun-Yu stared in confusion at that departing back. Had he said the wrong thing again? Early the next morning, after Yun-Yu finished washing up and opened the door, he happened to run into the butler. Yun-Yu's professional instincts kicked in again, and he kept wanting to do something. The butler was very attentive and saw through his thoughts at a glance. So a few minutes later, Yun-Yu was standing at Pitmin's bedroom door, his fingers trembling as he slowly pulled the door open. In the spacious, bright room, the air was saturated with a thick pheromone scent. Yun-Yu hesitated as he walked to the bedside. The man on the bed was excessively handsome, his peaceful sleeping face like a flower that had not yet fully bloomed. Yun-Yu's gaze slid downward against his will. The man's firm, flawless lines and contours entered his field of vision, as if wrapped in a faint layer of light. As expected, it was just as he had thought. Yun-Yu realized he had been staring for too long and immediately averted his gaze. Get a grip. I'm here to wake him up. But the closer he got, the more his voice trembled. Mr. Pai Tman. Maybe Yun-Yu's voice was too soft, because the man still showed no sign of waking up. Yun-Yu had no choice but to reach out and shake the man's shoulder to rouse him. But the instant the man opened his eyes, his messy hair and those amethyst-like, gleaming eyes crashed unguarded right into Yun-Yu's field of vision. Yun-Yu nearly forgot to breathe. How could he possibly not love this man? The next second, the man suddenly lifted his arm and yanked him straight into his embrace. The scent of the pheromones rushed over him, a kind of gentleness he had never smelled before, cloyingly sweet. Pitmin seemed to be bewitched by something, and his next move grew even bolder. But before he could take it any further, Pitmin suddenly raised his hand and shoved Yun-Yu away hard. Yun-Yu staggered back a couple of steps, almost falling. Pitmin, still on the bed, only cared about cursing. Damn it, your pheromones. No, that's not it. It's your face, no damn it. As if venting his anger, he hurled the pillow away with a violent toss. Yun-Yu was so startled by this sudden reversal that his face went pale. Why are you here? The domineering CEO, who had just gotten out of bed, directly lost his temper at the little secretary beside him and shamelessly shifted the blame onto him, saying it was the secretary who had led him astray. Ever since the little secretary moved in, the CEO had been afraid he would lose control. Yun-Yu also thought Pitmin would kick him out like before, so he immediately explained why he had come. The butler had asked him to come and ask what Pitmin wanted to eat. Pitmin was stunned into silence and could only follow along with what Yun-Yu said, giving his own request with a cold face. But as soon as Pitmin sat up, he suddenly lifted his hand and flung the sheet aside. Yun-Yu was so embarrassed that he immediately turned his face away. Even after he walked out of the room, he was still dazed, completely unable to figure out what on earth Pitmin was trying to do. When he got to the dining table, Yunyu listened to Pitmin and the butler talking about tonight's party. The party was being held right in Pitmin's villa. With Pitmin there, he wasn't supposed to have anything to worry about. But the moment he thought it might be the same kind of party as last time, cold sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. When Pitmin finished eating, the butler noticed that he didn't look well and advised him to go stay in the annex for now. The plan was to call Yunyu back after the gathering was over. The butler had arranged everything very thoroughly. Yunyu also knew there was no other way now, so he could only nod in agreement. By the time he was woken up by the sound of his phone ringing, the party had almost completely dispersed. He had actually fallen asleep just like that in the annex. After answering the call, Yunyu thanked the butler, and only then was he finally able to relax and head back. But it was pitch dark outside. As Yunyu walked through the garden, looking left and right, he grew more and more flustered. The layout of Pitmin's villa was practically like a maze. It was honestly a bit scary at night, and just then, a dog suddenly darted out from who knows where. He barked madly at Yunyu, and the next second lunged straight at him. "Stop, Alex!" The dog that had been vicious just a moment ago braked instantly, its paws abruptly freezing in midair. It was too strange. Yunyu collapsed onto the ground, his whole body shaking uncontrollably. When he looked up, the blonde man tilted his head and stared at him. Wasn't this Pitmin's friend, Mr. Moreau? The CEO who always claimed publicly that he wasn't into men, yet had just pulled his little secretary straight into his arms. That had left even his best friend dumbfounded. Picking up the topic again. After the party ended, Yunyu unexpectedly ran into Moreau walking his dog. The doctor's previous words flashed uncontrollably through his mind. A numb chill ran down his back, and goosebumps broke out all at once. He hurriedly scrambled up from the ground. Forcing himself, he greeted Moreau. But Moreau acted as if he hadn't heard him and instead introduced his dog. "This guy usually doesn't bite people. Looks like he really likes you. When he hits breeding season, do you want to think about it? This guy is very capable." Yunyu went pale with fright, his breath catching in his throat. Seeing that the little secretary had actually taken him seriously, Moreau shrugged and put on an innocent face. "I was joking." Yunyu was utterly fed up with this man. Just like Pitmin, his mouth was nasty and his heart was too. But that being said, even though the dog was terrifying, his pheromones, Yunyu's breathing only grew more rapid, his chest tightening, and the signs of an episode began to surface again. He wanted to turn around and leave, but Moreau clutched him in a death grip, chasing after him with questions. "Wait a second, how are you even here? You're not the person in charge of today's gathering. You're not supposed to be here at all." He could no longer process what Moreau was saying. Yunyu was left with only one thought: run. That person pressed down on his shoulder again and asked in a low voice, "Where are you trying to go?" Terror surged up all at once. Yunyu felt as if someone were squeezing his throat, and he couldn't even draw a breath. Just as he was about to suffocate, a strong hand landed on his shoulder. The next second, he was pulled into a solid and familiar embrace. "It's okay," breathe slowly. The man's voice was very gentle, close to his ear as he soothed him over and over again. Yunyu's tears burst out at once, like someone about to drown clutching driftwood for dear life. He trembled and clung tightly to Pitmin. Moreau froze on the spot. What on earth is going on? Who would have thought Pitmin would suddenly lose control and roar at him? "Shut up, Moreau. Rein in your pheromones." Pitmin wrapped his arms around Yunyu's waist and lifted him up, repeatedly guiding him to breathe slowly. Moreau chased after him, asking Pitmin why this was happening. Would he become like this just from smelling someone else's pheromones? He had almost had an episode. That made it even harder for Moreau to understand. In his view, that incident had ended long ago, and he had no idea how deep a wound it had left on Yunyu. Pitmin remained silent. It was not until Moreau pressed him. "He can only smell your pheromones? No one else's works?" That Pitmin replied with just one word: "Yes." Moreau deliberately teased him with a laugh. "Then why don't you just sleep together? He'd definitely be up for it." Pitmin's face darkened, and his tone went cold and brooked no argument. "I do not allow you to joke like that. Moreau, shut up." The pheromones unconsciously released by Pitmin made Yunyu's consciousness grow hazy bit by bit. Yet Moreau's voice reached his ears with unusual clarity. Heh, how pathetic. As soon as Yunyu heard that ambiguous sigh, he understood everything. Moreau had probably long since realized. He himself had fallen for Pitmin. After that, life went on as usual each day, except he kept seeing Pitmin bring different women home. Every time, he would wait outside the door and only dare to enter once everything inside had gone completely quiet. Strangely enough, Pitmin actually stayed with this one, Naomi, for quite a while. For a whole week, he was stuck to her side. That day, the sounds in the room suddenly stopped. Naomi came out, refreshed and twisting her waist as she walked. After coming by a few times, she more or less knew Yeonyu was Pitmin's secretary, so she casually asked him to see her home. Looking at Yeonyu's fair skin and handsome face, Naomi suddenly became interested and asked outright, "Are you really an Omega? Have you also been involved with Pitmin?" Yeonyu blurted out without even thinking, "No, Mr. Pitmin doesn't like men." The moment the words left his mouth, he immediately regretted it. Why was he even explaining this to her? Naomi kept saying what a pity it was, then excitedly went on about Pitmin's body, saying Pitmin was the best man she had ever seen. She also said that if they ever really broke up one day, she might also end up crying and making a scene, clinging to him and refusing to let go. All Yeonyu could do was remind her, "It's fine if you cling to Pitmin, but please don't hit me." When it came down to it, every time Pitmin broke up, the one who had the bad luck of being used as a punching bag by the women was actually Yeonyu. Naomi froze for a moment, then her smile grew even brighter. Everyone goes after the soft target. They just don't have the guts to go after Pitmin himself, though I can't guarantee I won't turn into that kind of person when the time comes. He thought that would be the end of the topic, but then Naomi shamelessly said out of nowhere, "Since I can't hit you, can I touch you instead?" She even said loudly that Yeonyu looked like her son. Yeonyu was instantly embarrassed. "Your son?" Naomi nodded excitedly. "Yeah, his name is Michi and you really look alike. Whenever Michi gets mad, he makes this exact face. See, isn't it adorable?" As soon as she finished speaking, the woman toppled straight into his arms. Yeonyu didn't even have time to worry about whether she meant he looked like a Shiba Inu, because he realized this woman was a beta, and he had experienced this kind of reaction from someone before. Yeonyu forced his emotions down and reminded her, "When you go back you must shower before you sleep, and remember to take your medicine, otherwise you might differentiate into an Omega." Naomi's red lips curled up. "You're really considerate, little puppy." The next second, under Yeonyu's shocked gaze, she did something no one expected. She actually forced a kiss on the submissive one. Right after that, Miss Naomi, whose consciousness was unclear, wrapped herself tightly around Yeonyu. Fortunately, the butler appeared in time and took Naomi away. After finally shaking her off, Yeonyu turned his head, only to see the CEO standing on the balcony. The CEO's expression was clearly very bad. Had he seen everything that just happened? But Pitmin didn't say anything. He simply turned around and left. Yeonyu lowered his eyes in dejection. "So, I'm the only one who gets jealous?" A few days later, the doctor came again. Because Yeonyu's condition had shown no improvement, this time he brought 2 bottles of medicine. Saying they would switch to medication treatment, the doctor told Yeonyu that whenever he had an episode, he should first take a red pill. If he still couldn't suppress his emotions, then he should take the medicine in the blue bottle. Yeonyu was a little curious. What exactly was in the blue bottle? The doctor said this is only to be taken when the other medicine has no effect. You can endure it, but try not to touch it if possible, because there will be side effects. Yeonyu nodded and said softly that he understood. In the evening, the president came back, looking utterly exhausted. Yeonyu took the initiative to speak, saying he wanted to give him a massage to help relieve his fatigue. But when he said this, Yeonyu felt a bit embarrassed again. He had learned massage while working part-time in college to earn living expenses. Afraid the president wouldn't believe him, he added that he had a massage therapist license. "Come to my room in 10 minutes. Pitmin didn't say much, just this one sentence. Yet it made Yeonyu's heart suddenly race out of control. Yeonyu had only mentioned it casually and hadn't expected Pitmin to actually agree. Just thinking about having to touch the other man's body made his whole body tense up. During the massage, Yeonyu was almost constantly asking how Pitmin felt, his voice extremely cautious. Yet when his fingertips really touched the man's firm muscles, instead of nervousness, what surged up in Yeonyu's heart was actually a kind of emptiness. If he were a woman, he could kiss him and touch him more naturally, and could even say it outright, "I like you." Just as Yeonyu was all tangled up in these thoughts, Pitmin suddenly raised his eyes and asked him, "How long have you been doing this?" Yeonyu hesitated for a moment before answering. In the past, he only worked part-time during vacations, and by now it has been 3 years. As they chatted, the topic shifted to Naomi. Yeonyu asked the president if he wanted him to book a hotel for Naomi for tomorrow, since it wasn't easy for him to finally meet someone he was satisfied with. They often met up and had spent many happy moments together. Hearing this, the president still couldn't hold back and quietly countered, "Does sleeping together also count as happy times?" Yeonyu's eyes lit up, and he said seriously, "I think that when you're with someone you like, no matter what you're doing, as long as you're together, you'll be happy. Was it your gentleness that made me mistakenly think that I had really fallen in love with you?" Once the topic was picked up, Yeonyu, while massaging Pitmin, pretended to ask casually, Why do you always change partners? The scummy top, however, didn't care at all. In his view, maintaining a relationship is too troublesome, and it's pretty much the same with anyone. This way it can also block outside speculation. Bitterness welled up in Yeon-yu's heart. Sure enough, Pitmin sees someone truly caring about him, someone clinging to him, all as a nuisance. Then he thought of himself. Ever since he started living with Pitmin, his heart had been drifting, unable to settle down. Wasn't he secretly hoping for something? He had originally thought that as long as Pitmin didn't treat him so gently, this wildly beating heart of his would gradually cool down. But he couldn't do it. Thinking of this, Yeon-yu suddenly felt that he was very pitiful. Seeing that Pitmin was sleeping very deeply, Yeon-yu held his breath and quietly turned over, wanting to leave. But a hand suddenly grabbed him. Wasn't Pitmin asleep? Yeon-yu thought he had woken the president up and could only ask carefully, "Do you need anything?" Instead, the president tightened his grip, clamping down hard on his wrist. The pain made Yeon-yu lose control and he let out a muffled groan. The president looked at him coldly and said nothing. The next second, he released his hand and let him go. As soon as the door closed, Yeon-yu's heart immediately began to race, thudding wildly. As soon as the door closed, Yeon-yu's heart immediately began to race, thudding wildly, and it felt as if the warmth of his hand still lingered on his wrist. Over the past few days, Yeon-yu could clearly feel that the president seemed to grow more exhausted with each passing day. Could it be related to Miss Naomi? While Yeon-yu was still making wild guesses, Pitmin suddenly fixed his gaze on him. The pressure in the air seemed to drop all at once, and Yeon-yu keenly sensed that the president was in a very bad mood. "When are you going to get better?" The man frowned, every bit of his tone steeped in impatience. Having his sore spot ripped open right in front of him, the color instantly drained from Yeon-yu's face. He thought he had already gotten much better, but in reality, without Pitmin around, he didn't even dare step outside the office door. With a dark expression, the man suddenly threw out a cold remark. "You are really such a headache." The words pierced straight into Yeon-yu's heart like an icy blade. The words he wanted to say stuck in his throat, and in the end he swallowed them back down. What was the point of explaining? It was completely meaningless. Was he still expecting that person to understand how he felt? But everything that had happened recently made him unconsciously attach meaning to these behaviors, when he was clearly well aware that, to the man in front of him, he was nothing at all. The long-term sense of inferiority forced Yeon-yu to apologize first without thinking, even though the president did not say another word afterward. Yeon-yu also took all the blame onto himself, with only one thought left in his head: to get his illness treated as soon as possible so as not to delay Pitmin's work. The cold-hearted president, who had said with his own mouth that he would never fall for a man, actually did something no one had expected in the very second. He saw his little secretary burst into tears with his own eyes. After that, Yeon-yu followed Pitmin out to discuss business. But when they arrived at the agreed location, the other party still hadn't shown up. On the phone they said they were still on the way, yet they forcibly kept them waiting in the restaurant for a full 2 hours. Yeon-yu suppressed his emotions while repeatedly communicating with the other side. But Pitmin's patience had already run out. Having long since figured out his boss's temper, Yeon-yu could only immediately keep up with the man's pace. He failed to notice that, in a corner of the restaurant, there was a sneaky red-haired man whose gaze was locked firmly onto Pitmin. His movements were strange. His hands clenched so tightly they turned white, veins bulging on the backs of his hands, as if he might pounce at any moment. Taking advantage of the moment when no one was paying attention, he suddenly lunged toward Pitmin's back. Fortunately, Pitmin reacted extremely quickly, lifting his arm to block it head-on. But the tomato juice hidden in his sleeve exploded on the spot. The color instantly drained from Yeon-yu's face. The red-haired man struggled like a madman and was quickly pinned down by Pitmin's bodyguards who rushed forward. He kept cursing as he struggled. Turns out he was an anti-extreme excellence alphaist who believed all extremely excellent alphas deserved to die. The scene was in chaos, yet Yeon-yu remained calm and unhurried, first neatly yanking off his tie. He bandaged Pitmin's wound, then coolly handed over each work item to the bodyguard captain who had been scared senseless. When putting Pitmin into the car, he didn't stop contacting the hospital for even a second. Pitmin sat beside him, silently watching every move of his little secretary. He probably hadn't expected that the little secretary he couldn't live without just a few days ago, when faced with a tricky situation that would make even an alpha panic, could arrange everything so cleanly and efficiently, controlling the scene, contacting the hospital, and then suppressing the public opinion heat. Pitmin took it all in, and an improper ripple rose in his chest along with it. And after everything had been dealt with, Yeon-yu's gaze was still glued to the man's arm, not moving away. He forced himself to stay calm, but his mind was still a complete mess. If only I could have blocked it a little faster. They soon arrived at the hospital, and the doctor retreated Pitmin's wound. Unable to rest easy about that injury, Yeonyu took the initiative to help Pitmin change clothes and softly asked how the wound was. Pitmin, however, suddenly let out a snort of laughter, completely different from his earlier irritable self. It was just a few stitches. The doctor said you did a very good job stopping the bleeding. The tips of Yeonyu's ears grew hot. To him, it sounded like praise. Pitmin's hands and feet were inconvenient to move, so Yeonyu personally fastened each of his buttons one by one. As soon as he got close to this man, Yeonyu couldn't help but relive the danger from that time in the restaurant in his mind. Just now he had really thought that he was going to lose Pitmin. Pitmin also noticed that the little secretary was not quite right and frowned as he asked him what was wrong. He hadn't expected the little secretary to look up with reddened eyes, tears about to fall as he apologized over and over. I should have been the one to protect you. I clearly saw that person. If I had just been a little faster. Pitmin didn't understand. That was originally the bodyguard captain's duty. So why was Yeonyu blaming himself? But his clumsy attempt at comfort was clearly useless and instead only made Yeonyu feel even more guilty. Yeonyu's chest hurt so much it tightened, and he even felt it would be better if the injured one were him. Seeing that guilty and sorrowful expression on Yeonyu's face, Pitmin's heart felt as if someone were viciously squeezing it. Why is it that whenever he cries, I'm in unbearable pain? Pitmin almost instinctively raised his hand and directly covered Yeonyu's swollen, tearful eyes. He slowly leaned closer and closer to the little secretary. The scumbag top claimed with his mouth that he didn't like men. Yet relying on the fact that the little secretary liked him, he would, every so often, forcibly give the other a throat examination. By the time the examination was over, Yeonyu was terribly dizzy. His unstoppable tears, combined with the scent of Pitmin's pheromones, made his vision completely blurry. Only one thought remained in his mind. Once Pitmin sobers up, he will definitely regret this to death. He didn't even have time to think before that burly body, hard as iron, came pressing down again. Yeonyu also sank into it a little, his hands uncontrollably wrapping around the man's nape. But in the next second, Pitmin's eyes suddenly cleared. With a face full of irritation, he let go of Yeonyu and cursed under his breath. Damn it! Right after that, he left Yeonyu where he was and turned to walk out of the hospital room. When he reached the door, he suddenly stopped, like he couldn't explain his own loss of control just now at all. So he shoved all the blame onto Yeonyu. It's all because of you. Yeonyu had known he would definitely say that. Yes, it was all Yeonyu's fault. He clearly could have stopped it, but still let everything happen, because he hadn't wanted to miss the sweetness of that moment. Yeonyu's hands clutched the sheet beneath him in a death grip, tears sliding silently from the corners of his eyes. Yet in the end, the outcome was still unbearably ugly, harsh to the eyes. The next morning, Pitmin's expression was even darker. Yeonyu cautiously stole a look at his face. Unexpectedly, the two of them actually met each other's gaze. Pitmin didn't avoid it either, just stared straight at the delicious little secretary opposite him. That instantly drove Yeonyu's nerves taut. He thought the other man was still dwelling on what had happened at the hospital last night, so he could only probe, "What would you like to say?" Pitmin said blandly, "Nothing." The more he acted like this, the more Yeonyu minded it, unable to stop thinking about it even while at work. Until Ima knocked on the office door, he suddenly snapped back to his senses. Turned out it was already lunchtime. Yeonyu briefly asked about the recent situation in the secretary's office. After learning that the department was running well, he smiled and thanked Ima. In a low and modest voice, Ima said, "This is what I should be doing." She smoothly handed over the sandwich she had prepared in advance for Yeonyu to try. Noticing that since his return Yeonyu had barely left his office, she had thought of bringing him lunch. Yeonyu was stunned as well. Did Ima somehow know that he couldn't go out? Wearing a smile yet afraid her intentions would be seen through, Ima could only pretend to explain casually. She had just made an extra one and told Yeonyu not to feel pressured. Yeonyu believed her, returned the smile, and thanked her earnestly. With her goal achieved, Ima felt completely satisfied and turned to leave. She had just turned around when she saw her own boss, face dark, leaning slantwise against the door. Pitmin suddenly appeared, and even Yeonyu was taken aback. Wasn't Pitmin supposed to be out at a lunch appointment? This domineering CEO actually threw the little secretary's lunch straight into the trash right in front of them. All because he had seen with his own eyes the little secretary accepting something from someone else. In that instant, his mood became restless to the extreme, especially that smile that was supposed to unfold only for him. When that smile also fell on someone else, An indescribable anger surged up from the bottom of Pitmeen's heart. He even unconsciously released his pheromones. After the female subordinate left, he suppressed his jealousy and asked, "She came up here on purpose just to bring you this?" Yeonyu was afraid Pitmeen would misunderstand, so he could only explain that he was just relatively popular with women, but they didn't actually like him as the opposite sex. He had originally thought he would be mocked by men for this, but Pitmeen actually agreed with what he said. What Yeonyu didn't know was that Pitmeen was still brooding over what had happened last time. As they kept talking, they suddenly realized that Yeonyu hadn't eaten yet. The president let out a soft sigh. Yeonyu explained in a low voice that he just didn't want to trouble Pitmeen, who could have known that the domineering president didn't respond with a single word and simply walked right past him. The next second, he casually tossed the sandwich that a female subordinate had brought into the trash can. Yeonyu was stunned on the spot, his voice even nodding up as he said, "What are you doing, sir?" The president lifted his chin and, in a tone so forceful it allowed no refusal, ordered Yeonyu to come with him. A few minutes later, the two of them stopped in front of a Western restaurant. The prices on the menu were outrageously high, and Yeonyu almost stood up right then and there. If it weren't for the president's oppressive aura weighing down on him, he might have already fled. Yeonyu had originally thought that the reason the president pushed aside his work and brought him here was because he wanted to make an example of him. After all, he would be the one to bear the consequences of canceling the schedule in the end. But in a certain moment, he still couldn't deny that he was very happy. What was even more outrageous was that Pitmeen, in a rare move, even reminded him. Once he finished eating, he was to get off work immediately. Yeonyu couldn't figure out what the man was thinking at all. Yet as soon as those words fell, his heart instead relaxed, and he was finally able to eat his lunch in peace. It didn't take long before the tipsiness hit, and Yeonyu, all excited, was waving his arms and dancing in front of Pitmeen. The man just sat there quietly, watching his silly, laughing secretary across from him. That gaze was too restrained, yet it just happened to hide a trace of tenderness he didn't want others to notice. After they finished eating, Yeonyu's steps felt floaty, but he still obediently followed Pitmeen into the car. In a daze, he thought again of the man's face, abstinent yet dangerous. He seemed to see Pitmeen smile. Did he see it wrong? The president would rather push away his work than miss the chance to invite his little secretary at his side out for lunch. The simple-minded little secretary accidentally gets drunk and, all woozy, dreams that he's eating a lollipop. He comfortably turned over, wanting to lean his head back, but was jabbed painfully by something heavy and solid. Yeonyu opened his eyes with a blank look on his face. His head was actually resting on his own boss's lap, and on Pitmeen's long, slender fingers there was even a smear of something transparent. Realizing what was going on, Yeonyu's face flushed hot in an instant. The next second, a startled scream exploded in the air, and the car shook violently along with it. So mortified he wanted the ground to swallow him whole, Yeonyu scrambled upright and apologized frantically to the president. "I'm sorry, I fell asleep by accident." The more he thought about how embarrassing he had just been, the less Yeonyu dared to lift his head and look at Pitmeen's face. Just as Yeonyu was about to be drowned by his anxiety, the man finally took great pity on him and let him get out of the car. As if he'd been pardoned, the moment the car door opened, Yeonyu bolted out at once. But only when he lifted his eyes did he realize they were already home. Why was there no movement from Pitmeen at all? Yeonyu mustered his courage again and turned to look into the car. The man, however, turned his head to the side with a cold air, his expression completely unreadable, and only tossed out one sentence: "Close the door and go up." That low and chilling tone made Yeonyu shiver involuntarily. Yeonyu knew Pitmeen was angry again. He apologized in a small voice while closing the car door. After going upstairs, Yeonyu still felt tense inside, staring out the window without daring to relax. Only after about 30 minutes did Pitmeen finally get out of the car. Yeonyu didn't know what Pitmeen had been doing in the car, but judging from the man's face, his mood was clearly very bad. Did he really hate him that much? Being disliked by the person he liked made a fine, dense pain stab through Yeonyu's chest. An hour later, when Yeonyu had finally managed to lie down on the bed and tried to forget this piece of black history, he was woken again by a call from Pitmeen. The president wanted him to arrange a hotel. Looked like he was going to have another date with his new girlfriend. Even though it was already late at night, Yeonyu still didn't dare disobey Pitmeen's order of, "I'm in a bad mood." After he finished arranging everything, he went to stand in front of Pitmeen's bedroom door. The air was saturated with such a thick, bitter pheromone scent that Yeonyu could hardly breathe, and his legs were gradually going weak. Only then did Yeonyu realize his own cycle was probably about to start. As the president, who is an exceptionally superior alpha, He actually started having thoughts he never should have about his little secretary. Yet what remained of his reason kept sternly reminding him. It was impossible for him to fall in love with a man. But when he saw the little secretary standing too close to someone else, smiling too intimately, he realized he was so jealous he was about to lose control. Forcing himself to keep the conversation going and taking 3 times his usual dosage of medicine, only then could Yun-Yu barely manage to go to work in peace. His colleague Ima asked him to have lunch together. This was the first time the two of them had sat down to eat together since the incident. When the mood was just right, Ima asked Yun-Yu a bit shyly, how did the sandwich she gave him yesterday taste? Thinking of how that sandwich had been tossed straight into the trash can by the president, Yun-Yu couldn't bear to tell the truth, so he could only gloss over it. Ah, of course, it was delicious. You're really good at cooking. As they chatted, the topic suddenly shifted to Ima's mother needing dialysis. Ima was very distressed because the insurance payout had already hit its upper limit, and her good-for-nothing playboy older brother, who worked as a bodyguard, was completely unreliable. Recently, the financial pressure had been suffocating. As a fellow wage earner, Yun-Yu understood all too well the grievance of having no money. He lightly patted Ima's hand as a form of comfort, then took the initiative to say he would help her think of a solution. Just then, the break room door was suddenly flung open. Pitmin stood in the doorway, breathing heavily, as if he had rushed all the way there. Yun-Yu and Ima both froze at the same time and turned their heads toward him in unison. Yet Pitmin's gaze just happened to fall on their tightly clasped hands. His brows furrowed, so slightly it was almost imperceptible. His gaze shifted and swept once more over the drinks and desserts on the table. Pitmin's expression grew even colder, and he opened his mouth with a question. Why didn't you answer the phone? His boss had suddenly appeared, leaving Yun-Yu completely confused. Wasn't Pitmin supposed to be at his lunch appointment? He hurriedly unlocked his phone, only to find the screen filled with missed calls. Yun-Yu quickly apologized to the president, but it was as if the president hadn't heard a word. The president simply turned around and walked off, and with a guilty feeling in his chest, Yun-Yu could only rush to follow behind. Yun-Yu wanted to ask, why was the noon schedule suddenly canceled? The president only said lightly that he had already arranged a new schedule. A new schedule? So, does he have something to assign to me? But instead, the president threw out a string of baffling words. I just came to confirm. What is your next engagement? When they returned to the office, the president raised his hand and picked up that bag on the desk. Yun-Yu was stunned for a moment. Wasn't that his desk? What exactly was lying on it? Before he could say anything, the next second, the man unhesitatingly tossed the thing straight into the trash can. Just as he was about to go out the door, the president's hand suddenly paused. Just now, did you go there alone? Ah yes, thanks to you, Mr. Pitmin. I seem to be much better now. You said thanks to me? You've been letting me stay at your place, letting me keep breathing in your pheromones. To me, you are the safest, most exceptional alpha in the world, because you would never touch me. A nameless anger suddenly surged in Pitmin's heart, and the strong scent of his pheromones also poured out uncontrollably. Yun-Yu jolted in shock and immediately covered his mouth and nose. The man in front of him finally turned his head, his expression dark and terrifying. Looking for a new woman? Yun-Yu asked hesitantly. Then, the previous Miss Naomi. When the president heard this, the corner of his mouth lifted in scorn. Aren't you now able to move around as you please? Yun-Yu froze. Could it be that in the past, because he couldn't move about freely and couldn't change partners for him, he had kept going out with Naomi? This president would lose his temper at his little secretary just because he smelled another person's perfume on him. Continuing from that topic, Pitmin brought lunch to the little secretary, only to accidentally catch him and another woman tightly holding hands. A fire he couldn't name instantly flared up in Pitmin's heart. He directly threw the food into the trash can. Unexpectedly, after he left, the little secretary didn't mind the filth at all and picked the food back out of the trash. He opened the packaging. Inside were a sandwich and a drink. Had Pitmin come looking for him just to give him these? Yun-Yu grabbed the sandwich and took bite after bite. What Pitmin had said was indeed very upsetting. But then he thought if he kept going on like this, perhaps he really would become a secretary completely useless to Pitmin. There's no way he could always rely on Pitmin to pull him up every time. At that moment, the door was suddenly pushed open. It turned out Pitmin had come back again. Yun-Yu jolted in fright and immediately stood up. Did everything go smoothly? Pitmin spoke as his gaze uncontrollably swept toward the now empty package. The little secretary answered nervously. According to your instructions, I didn't leave the office and I ate what you gave me. Pitmin suddenly raised his hand and, as if giving a reward, gently ruffled his hair. It happened so suddenly that the little secretary's face flushed hot in an instant. Was it because he had done well enough following Pitmin's instructions that he was being patted? Just then, Yun-Yu once again smelled that overwhelming, oppressive scent of pheromones on Pitmin. He knew his illness could no longer be delayed. Pitmin's susceptibility period was approaching. He didn't want to keep being a secretary who was of no use, so he went to see a doctor and, gritting his teeth, decided to follow the treatment plan the doctor had described. The doctor led him into the laboratory, the corners of his mouth holding that unreadable smile. But before they even stepped through the door, Yun-Yu had already gone pale with fright. There was actually a top-tier alpha standing inside. The doctor patted him and told him not to be nervous. Separated by a pane of glass made from special material, the person inside couldn't see them. The doctor told Yun-Yu to inhale, then slowly exhale. Only by daring to look directly at his fear would his psychological illness have a chance to improve. Just like that, Yun-Yu held out until midnight before returning to the villa. The butler saw how unsteady his steps were and grew terribly worried. Yun-Yu only said he was too tired, then went straight upstairs. But as soon as he looked up, Pitmin was standing right in front of him. His gaze so oppressive it made it hard to breathe. "What is this smell?" Yun-Yu didn't even have time to answer. His knees went weak and he almost collapsed, but luckily Pitmin caught him in his arms. Yun-Yu couldn't hold on any longer and explained, trembling all over, "This is a new treatment method. The doctor said I have to first get used to the pheromones of an S-class alpha, so he took me to meet that S-class alpha he knows." He thought that once he explained it clearly, it would be fine, but the president exploded on the spot and yelled at him, "So your whole body is covered in that guy's pheromone scent?" The president flew into a rage at his little secretary, just because his little secretary was tainted with a scent that didn't belong to him. Yun-Yu didn't understand why Pitmin was angry. Smelling someone else's pheromones was only for treatment. Yun-Yu hurried to explain. "The doctor said just 2 or 3 more times will do, and I also finished it smoothly today. In a few days, I'll be better." Pitmin didn't even wait for him to finish before yanking him over, dragging him by brute force. He flung him hard into the bathtub. This kind of Pitmin was far too unfamiliar. Yun-Yu was instantly terrified. He couldn't stop trembling, and the more he trembled, the worse it got. The man looked down at him from on high, staring coldly, with not a trace of pity in his eyes. The next second, he picked up the floral liquor and poured it all over Yun-Yu, as if trying to wash off a scent that didn't belong to him. Yun-Yu struggled desperately, his voice hoarse as he begged him to stop. But when he lifted his head, he looked up in horror and saw the eyes of the man in front of him had actually turned into strange and eerie golden pupils, and a chill instantly crawled all the way up his spine. At the same time, under the influence of Pitmin's pheromones, Yun-Yu only felt as if his body were on fire, growing hotter and hotter, so hot it hurt. Seeing his discomfort, Pitmin lowered his voice and asked him why he was like this. Yun-Yu's mind was already a complete mess. Trembling, he begged Pitmin to bring him the medicine. Following his words, Pitmin rummaged through Yun-Yu's briefcase and found the medicine. "Is it this?" Yun-Yu nodded frantically. "Hurry, give it to me." Who would have thought that in the next second, the man would pour out all the pills right in front of him. He even lifted his foot and ground them viciously to pieces under his shoe. Those golden eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "I'll help you." He yanked Yun-Yu over roughly, and Yun-Yu struggled with all his might. Yun-Yu still barely managed to stay a little clear-headed, even though they were both in heat. But Yun-Yu hadn't forgotten what Pitmin had said before. Pitmin would never play poker with a man. Yet the man simply told Yun-Yu to shut up and shove the key into the lock cylinder. A few days later, in the early morning, sunlight filled the room. Yun-Yu opened his drowsy eyes. Several days of poker tournaments had left him utterly exhausted. He turned his head, and an overly handsome face crashed straight into his field of vision. Because he was jealous, the CEO had actually forced his little secretary to play poker with him in such a domineering way. The two of them played for 3 days and 3 nights straight. Only after he had eaten him clean and wiped him dry did the CEO finally fall into a deep sleep, completely satisfied. Yun-Yu woke up groggily, and only when he finally couldn't hear that wet, sticky sound anymore did he let out a sigh of relief. Seeing that Pitmin was still not awake, Yun-Yu carefully climbed out of bed, forcing himself to endure the sore weakness between his legs. He walked out the door on unsteady feet. He hadn't expected the butler to have been waiting at the door for a long time already. Seeing Yun-Yu come out of Pitmin's room with his clothes in disarray, there wasn't a trace of surprise on his face. Instead, he calmly draped a coat over Yun-Yu's shoulders. "Yun-Yu, you've worked hard." It was only after that day that Yun-Yu understood why Pitmin had never woken up. After a breeding period ends, a top alpha will enter a deep sleep. Pitmin didn't wake up until 2 days later. When he heard the news, Yunyu was still lying in bed. It wasn't until a maid came to inform the butler that Yunyu confirmed it wasn't his imagination. The butler said that Pitmin had slept especially long this time, probably because this breeding period had been too intense. As soon as the thin-skinned Yunyu heard this, the tips of his ears immediately flushed bright red. But Yunyu really didn't have the face to see Pitmin, so he could only feign illness and lie in bed. The butler said that tomorrow Pitmin had to go to the company for work, and that Yunyu should also get ready in advance. Because it seemed there was something wrong with Pitmin's memory, Yunyu had to go and help. Yunyu was completely baffled when he heard this and pressed the butler to explain what he meant. The butler fell silent, thought for a moment, and then said that during the breeding period, Pitmin had never experienced anything like this before. Yunyu is also thinking back, trying to recall when he last saw Miss Naomi. Since the last time Pitmin went looking for a woman, it's probably already been half a month. The butler spoke with a grave expression, saying the attending physician had warned them. If too much pheromone builds up and it happens again, it will trigger very severe memory impairment. From now on, Yunyu, you need to be more attentive. Yunyu understood the subtext. He had always been the one arranging girlfriends for Pitmin, and to prevent this from happening again, he had to take action immediately. As for that absurd incident between the two of them a few days ago, it was nothing more than an accident brought on by a loss of control during the breeding period. This president clearly wears an indifferent, surly face in the daytime, and even toward that little secretary with whom he has had deep exchanges. He can't be bothered to respond properly. Yet as soon as work is over, the man seems to become a different person. He goes straight to corner the little secretary against the wall, so desperate that he insists on dragging him off for a PCR test. After just finishing that extreme workout, Yunyu still has to show up for work on time the next day, and as soon as colleague Ima sees him, she becomes especially happy. She can understand the difficulties Yunyu faces, because her older brother is also an Omega. Yunyu is very surprised Ima is a beta, and he had assumed her brother would be a beta as well. In Ima's view, the very fact that Yunyu is still able to keep coming in to work is already the best news. Before leaving, she reminds Yunyu, if he ever needs anything, he should come to her. Yunyu beams and thanks her politely. That face, prettier than a girl's, sends Ima's heartbeat racing. Looks like in our family, Susu really is irresistible to both men and women. But the ease was only temporary. Working at the same company, the president was bound to see him sooner or later. Yunyu took a deep breath and mustered the courage to push the door open. The man was in a crisp suit, sitting on a high-end leather armchair, smoke slowly curling from between his fingers. Yunyu forced himself to look away and earnestly reported on work. When he asked if any other schedule arrangements were needed, the man suddenly glanced over at him, and that gaze was so searing he couldn't avoid it at all. The man suddenly glanced over at him, and that gaze was so searing he couldn't avoid it at all. He immediately turned his face to the side, trying to act as if nothing was wrong, but his body lost control first and reacted on its own. Would the man notice? The suffocating weight of this humiliating desire left him unable to breathe. Yunyu bit down on his lip and still forced out that tiny, humble plea from his heart. The man turned his head and let out a long breath. Arrange it for after the meeting ends. Go out. Yunyu's mind went blank. He couldn't even speak smoothly and all but fled the office. Only then did he realize how outrageous what he had just said was, his lips trembling with shame. Yet Pitmin's reply made his face burn uncontrollably and his heart race wildly. He tried desperately to reassure himself. The man's attitude was not much different from before, and that previous farce would not be repeated. But in the next second, he suddenly smelled the fragrance on his own body. It was the pheromones unique to an Omega, but the moment he thought about the fact that it was drifting out from himself, his heart clenched. Could there be something wrong with his body? Yunyu absolutely did not want to give Pitmin any leverage to say that he had a smell on him. He immediately swallowed the special medicine. Later, he finally figured out that it was blooming. It's a common reaction after an Omega's first time. In order to attract an alpha more easily, the body will release its own scent. To hide that smell, Yunyu used almost every method he could think of. At last, when he finally made it to the end of the workday, Yunyu went back to the big villa together with Pitmin. But just as they went upstairs, Pitmin, who was walking in front, suddenly turned around. He abruptly clamped down on Yunyu's shoulders and, without saying a single word, forced him straight into the corner of the wall. Damn it, I've had nothing but this in my head all day. After that night, the president finally completely admitted it. He had really been bent. First, tossing his little secretary around in the villa corridor until his legs went weak still wasn't enough. He had even gone so far as to put on a full, no-holds-barred act right in the company office. He had even gone so far as to put on a full, no-holds-barred act right in the company office. Next, early the following morning, an indescribable sense of oppression filled the living room. Pitmin's face was so dark it was terrifying, and Yun-Yu didn't even dare breathe too loudly. Yun-Yu looked toward the butler as if asking for help, but this time even the butler had no idea what was going on and could only shrug helplessly. At this moment, Pitmin suddenly spoke and asked Yun-Yu why he left last night. Yun-Yu hesitated and said, "Aren't you always used to sleeping alone? I thought I should leave your room." After hearing this, Pitmin was silent for a few seconds, then stood up and left. He didn't even give Yun-Yu a moment to explain. Yun-Yu was still dumbfounded and hadn't reacted, not realizing that this clueless sentence had already angered his man. But what happened next at the company was what truly left him stunned on the spot. With an hour left before the meeting, Yun-Yu took the documents he had prepared in advance and handed them to the president for review. The president merely flipped through them casually, as if just killing time. Then he tossed the documents back in front of him, and Yun-Yu thought he must have made a mistake somewhere. Instead, what came out of the president's mouth was a completely unrelated line that made Yun-Yu's ears burn. "Right now I want to sleep with you. If you don't want to, then leave here immediately." He said this with such seriousness that it was as if he was telling Yun-Yu, "This is not a joke." Yun-Yu, who usually got carried away easily, was instead unusually clear-headed at this moment. The meeting was about to start, and what the president needed was preparation. And yet he was saying something like this in the office. What on earth was Pitmin trying to do? Before Yun-Yu could answer, the president, who had been sitting at the desk, suddenly stood up. It all happened too fast. Yun-Yu instinctively stepped back, fumbling in a panic to find the doorknob. He almost instinctively wanted to run, but then he thought if he left, Pitmin would definitely go look for a new partner. Just then, the handsome face in front of him raised a hand to him, as if inviting him over. Just a few days ago, the president who had been shouting, "I will never like men," was actually playing mahjong with his little secretary in the office. After it was over, Yun-Yu suddenly remembered. When they were playing mahjong just now, Pitmin's father had suddenly called. The call sounded like a very serious topic, and Pitmin even told him they would be going to the Angel's mansion on the weekend. "Please, Mr. Petumian, I can't do this anymore. I really can't keep doing this kind of thing with you." By the end, that stabbing pain had forced his voice into a choking tremble. He begged Petumian over and over to let him go, like a man crying for help. But this fragility and helplessness not only failed to win any concession, it instead ignited an even stronger possessiveness in the man. Petumian grew even more excited. He lunged at him directly and forcibly gave him a PCR test. Yonu struggled and resisted with all his might, and in the chaos he accidentally bit Petumian. The man flew into a rage on the spot, flipped him over, and pinned him down so hard he couldn't move. At that moment, there was no trace of Petumian's usual gentleness left on his face. His brows and eyes were filled only with coldness. "Don't worry, soon you'll think the same way I do." Right after that, waves of his pheromones crashed down over Yonu. Yonu went limp in an instant, his whole body trembling, able only to beg helplessly. That day, for the first time, he realized so clearly he was an omega. In front of a domineering alpha, he could only be forced to submit. Resistance would only be more painful, more pointless. After the workout, he raised his hand and slapped the man hard across the face. If it weren't for the suppression of the top-tier alpha's pheromones, he would never have lowered his head. He warned Petumian coldly that if he ever used pheromones to suppress him again, he would make sure Petumian died. The CEO was obviously stunned. The little secretary who had always been so meek and obedient actually dared to defy him. He yanked Yonu toward him, but Yonu only kept shouting at him to let go, not to touch him. He also said that as soon as dawn broke tomorrow, he would move out and immediately find a new partner for Petumian. Petumian was utterly baffled. "What are you talking about?" Yonu's gaze was resolute. "This is the last time. From now on, I will never have any kind of relationship with you again. Hey, thank you for taking care of me during this time." "Wait, you stop right there. I'm not finished talking yet." The door slammed shut with a loud bang. The president froze in place, but didn't go after him. "This is definitely the boldest bottom I've ever seen." After breaking up with a scumbag, he directly tossed the other party a check as a comfort fee. The scumbag was so furious he almost exploded on the spot. Then it says, after going through his lover's cheating and then being, Yonu was utterly disheartened, and from then on only discussed work with the president, never feelings, while still dutifully continuing to pick out new partners for him. This completely dumbfounded the scumbag. Clearly, Just yesterday they had still been the most compatible partners. Now he was going to play hard to get with him? Yonu's attitude was still very cold. So cold it bordered on overly polite. I'm introducing people to you who can spend your free time with you. Is there a problem? Petumian looked at him coldly, his long brows faintly furrowing. Yonu was reminded again of how indifferent Petumian had looked when he left Petumian's house. He seemed to think Yonu was just throwing a tantrum, but in truth, it really did look that way. After the man showed his displeasure, he finally still picked up the roster and started flipping through it impatiently. Very soon, he settled on a candidate from it. Yonu also checked Petumian's schedule in a very proper, by-the-book manner. At this, Petumian only let out a low chuckle, but the more he acted like he didn't care, even with a hint of contempt, the more disappointed Yonu became. Petumian thought this was all just a joke, like a master indulgently watching a spoiled cat throw a tantrum. That's right, he really was that full of himself. Yonu could no longer hold back either. He handed a black gift box to the man and asked, "What is this?" "It's the present you gave me." Yonu added another line, "I don't accept gifts for short-term relationships." Petumian told him to take it back, but Yonu was very firm and directly pulled a check out of his wallet. After writing it, he handed the check back to Petumian. "This is the fee for you taking care of me during this time." Petumian's expression didn't change until he saw the number written on the check. He finally couldn't keep up the pretense of being calm. His face instantly darkened. He, the dignified president of P Entertainment, actually had to see the day when someone paid him for his services. The most ruthless way to deal with a scumbag man is probably to be even more cold-hearted than he is. Having said that, Yonu, who felt he had been played, not only moved out of Petumian's villa, but even straightforwardly wrote Petumian a check, as if thanking the man for his services over the past few days. No president could endure such humiliation. The next second, the check was torn into shreds in his hand. After tearing it up, he even deliberately shrugged, as if provoking, "What can you do to me?" But Yonu merely looked at him calmly. But in the next second, Yonu suddenly grabbed the gift box and made a move that made everyone's heart stop. He lifted his hand and flicked it, and the gift box landed precisely in the trash can. Then, imitating the man's gesture, he shrugged, his tone so light it was as if nothing had happened. "The bill is settled. I'll head out first." It wasn't until the door shut with a click that the president was still frozen in place, and only after a while did everything on the surface return to calm. The president continued to treat him with coldness and mockery, but Yonu didn't take it to heart. He just let it go in one ear and out the other, focusing only on his own work. Meanwhile, Petumian began constantly changing partners again, switching to a new one whenever he got tired of the old. When the time was about right, he handed the list over to Petumian. Just as Petumian had said, he knew his boundaries very well. Everything that had happened between them before was nothing more than an accident. From then on, he had a few meals together with Emma and slowly became friends. Thanks to Emma, he learned a lot of things he hadn't known before. "Your older brother has a child?" Didn't I mention it before? He came here this time for work, so my nephew is staying at my place now." As she spoke, Emma handed over a photo of the child for Yonu to see. Just as she had said, the child was so cute it was almost too much. Yonu suddenly remembered that Emma's older brother was also an Omega like him, so he casually asked, "Does giving birth hurt a lot?" But to his surprise, Emma, as the younger sister, told him something even stranger. Her brother had suddenly showed up one day holding a baby, and she hadn't even known he was pregnant. This was completely unlike something her brother would do, but her brother's personality was so overbearing that she couldn't even ask who that alpha was. Giving birth to a child all alone? She didn't dare imagine it at all. Yonu lowered his eyes and muttered softly, "Having a child? What does that even feel like?" Emma didn't have any children of her own, but she felt that just her nephew alone was unbearably adorable. Then your own child would definitely be even cuter, right? This thought made Yonu can't help but feel curious. What does it feel like to give birth to a child and then raise them? In the future, would he also give birth to someone's child? When he thought of this, he suddenly froze. Then, whose would it be? Yonu, whose body and heart had both been deceived, finally broke up with that scumbag boss. He thought that once he cut things off cleanly, his days would return to peace. But on a rainy night, the two of them were once again forced to have their fates tied together. Continuing from that, Yonu, who had finally managed to enjoy a brief period of stability. Carrying the story forward, Yonu, who had finally spent a few peaceful days, suddenly had an uninvited guest show up at his home on a certain rainy night. In the middle of the night, while Yonu was sound asleep, a bout of furious pounding on the door jolted him awake. Terrified, he crawled up from the bed, yet he couldn't help but wonder, who on earth was knocking at the door? He hesitated for a long time before finally trembling as he got out of bed. Who is it? There was no answer from outside the door, only knocking that grew heavier and more urgent. He cautiously moved up to the peephole to take a look, only to see the last person he would ever expect to find at his door. He immediately pulled the door open. The man was in a complete mess, his clothes soaked and clinging to his body. Yonu was clearly full of questions. How could he be here at a time like this? But no matter what, this was still his superior, so Yonu helped him into the apartment. Are you all right? It's so late. Why did you come here? The silent man suddenly grabbed his hand. With an absolutely overpowering stance, he pinned Yonu against the wall. Yonu was stunned by this abnormal behavior. It wasn't until the man deliberately leaned closer. Only then did Yonu realize what the other wanted to do. His mind snapped clear in an instant, and he immediately turned his face away. Petumian, what are you doing? Stop. But how could an Omega's strength possibly restrain a dominant alpha? Yonu remembered that he had long since made up his mind never to get involved with Petumian again. Seizing the moment when the man was lost in his desire, he suddenly shoved him away. He had just started to run when he was yanked back again. Only then did he see the color of the man's eyes clearly, and that impatient pheromone that was practically overflowing. All of this was telling him Petumian's cycle had come, but by the time Yonu understood, it was already too late. He was tormented onto the bed, his arm hanging down in exhaustion, so tired he couldn't even lift it. Tears at the corners of his eyes slid down uncontrollably. He had only just broken up with that cheating scumbag. Who would have thought that in the middle of the night that man would show up at his door? No matter how Yonu struggled, he used overwhelming strength to directly declare his sovereignty. No matter how Yonu struggled, he used overwhelming strength to directly declare his sovereignty. But standing in front of his former lover, could Yonu really love once more? Even if that love would only make him more miserable, more pained. Yonu could only bite the man's ear, biting out all the grievance and hatred he had been pressing down in his heart. He had marked this man who had betrayed him, yet his tears still fell uncontrollably. That was his alpha. If only Petumian could truly belong to him alone, how wonderful that would be. Early the next morning, Yonu woke up in a state of soreness and ache. What was even stranger was that the man who had tangled with him the whole night had actually disappeared. Just as Yonu was about to get out of bed, a sudden sharp pain shot through his belly, making him instantly freeze. It didn't hurt down below. Instead, it was his stomach that hurt. This was the first time he had ever encountered something like this. But there was no time to dwell on that now. The most fatal problem was, yesterday he had actually marked Petumian. If Petumian found out, he would definitely never let Yonu off. At that moment, the shrill ring of the phone suddenly sounded. Yonu jolted in fright, but still guiltily picked it up. The call was from Petumian's butler, and only then did Yonu hear the whole story. It turned out that on the way to the party last night, the car broke down, and when everyone got out to fix it, Petumian suddenly disappeared at that moment. Thinking of how wretched and out of control Petumian had been the previous night, Yonu guessed that he had been in a confused state of mind and had staggered all the way to his doorstep. The butler hadn't known. Only in the early hours of this morning did they discover Petumian collapsed near the villa. No one knew what exactly the man had done. The moment she heard he had fainted, Yonu's chest tightened sharply. Fainted? Yes. His pheromones haven't been able to be released properly lately, and Mr. Petumian's heat cycle has come again and still hasn't ended. After that, he woke up twice, but each time he was very muddle-headed, as if something was wrong with his memory. Yonu knew about this as well. Not long ago, Petumian had experienced brief memory loss, which turned out to be caused by his cycle. The butler said that once Petumian was lucid again, he would most likely be unable to remember what had happened. He asked Yonu to pay more attention to this aspect and take good care of Petumian. Yonu agreed to be careful and then hung up the phone. It felt as if a great weight in her heart had suddenly dropped. Her whole body relaxed a lot. No memory, then he wouldn't need to run away. But to be safe, she still had to prepare in advance. It was from then on that many things began to spiral out of control. Petumian became even more irritable. Because he couldn't find the Omega who had marked him, he lashed out everywhere. Yonu was worried he would be discovered by the man. Yet at the same time he couldn't help thinking, it really felt amazing. But as time went on, Yonu noticed subtle changes in his own body. He constantly wanted to throw up, to the point where he couldn't even eat. He even suddenly fainted while calling the doctor for a consultation. Yonu let out a sigh. After a while, I should still go get a full checkup. In order to get revenge on the scumbag, the little Omega secretary secretly marked the man. Watching the man lose his temper every day because he couldn't find the person who had marked him, He was secretly enjoying it to no end. But not long after, he miserably realized that his own body was actually starting to show strange changes as well. While preparations for the party were underway, the butler noticed that Yonu looked very pale, but Yonu didn't take it seriously. Who could have expected that at this moment, his stomach would suddenly churn violently? Unable to suppress the nausea, Yonu bolted straight out the front door. He found a deserted corner, braced himself against the wall, and started dry heaving. Physiological tears were forcibly squeezed out. This wasn't the first time either. Yonu thought, if I rest for a bit, I'll be fine. His whole body went weak, and with his back against the wall, he slowly slid down into a squat. Just then, a strange male voice suddenly approached. Are you okay? You look really unwell. Do you want me to call 911? Meeting the stranger's emerald-like green eyes, Yonu froze, his words coming out all jumbled. And no, it's fine. The man asked again, can you stand up? Before Yonu had time to answer, the man slipped his hands under Yonu's armpits and hoisted him up in one move. This gave Yonu quite a scare. Getting this close without consent was far too rude, especially when the other party was a completely unfamiliar man. What on earth was he trying to do? In his struggle, Yonu unintentionally caught sight of something hanging from the man's ear, and the man, noticing his gaze, took the opportunity to explain. I'm a bodyguard. My employer is here for the party, and I came along with him. Only when he heard the other man was a bodyguard did Yonu realize he had struggled too fiercely just now, which made him feel a bit embarrassed instead. The man seemed not to mind at all and even handed the water to his side. Drink some of this, you'll feel a little better. After all that commotion just now, Yonu was already exhausted and couldn't even twist the bottle cap open. Noticing his embarrassment, the man simply reached over and opened it for him. Thanks to this man's help, Yonu retched in discomfort for quite a while before finally feeling a bit better. After finishing the water, his throat also felt much more comfortable. Seeing the color return to his face, the man finally showed a relieved smile. Feeling any better? Looking at that clean, gentle face, Yonu couldn't help but sigh inwardly. So a person's looks really could make someone drop all their guard. Compared to him, Petumian was always fiercely intimidating, his brows forever furrowed. It was just that he could occasionally be gentle too. Thinking of this, Yonu's expression unconsciously softened, and this exact scene was caught by Petumian. His little secretary was chatting and laughing with another man. The president, flooded with jealousy without realizing it himself, spoke one cutting line after another with a cold face, forcing Yonu into embarrassment. He even forcibly made him take a nucleic acid test. Going back a bit, when Yonu was arranging the party, he suddenly started gagging. At his most helpless moment, he was unexpectedly helped by a strange man with emerald green eyes. But just as they were finally starting to chat a little more easily, Petumian suddenly appeared. The man's face was dark as iron, his purple eyes cold and gleaming, pressing in like a blade. What are you doing? What is going on here? You and this man, Yonu hurried to explain. This is the bodyguard brought by today's invited guest. But looking at that somewhat familiar face, Yonu still lowered his head to think. Where exactly has he seen this person before? Petumian had originally only followed because he saw the little secretary suddenly run out and felt uneasy. But now, seeing Yonu actually zone out while talking to him, clearly still thinking about another man. These past few days he's been as cold to me as a stranger. Yet he smiles so happily at another man. Petumian's expression instantly darkened. Since you're feeling unwell and almost fainted before coming out. What? From what I see, you seem to be having a great time with another man. That barbed mockery from Petumian made the bit of color that had just returned to Yonu's face drain away again in an instant. What are you talking about? The president thought Yonu was playing dumb, but Yonu's eyes were tense with seriousness. Me? Having fun with a man? The contempt in Petumian's eyes deepened. The way you lose your soul the moment you see a man. Are you in heat or something? You won't even spare a bodyguard. You really are desperate. Or is it that you're fishing for a sugar daddy? Those words were like knives, stabbing into Yonu's heart again and again. In Petumian's eyes, was he really that worthless? Yonu clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white, yet his hands wouldn't stop trembling. After enduring to his limit countless times, he finally exploded. Do you even know what you're saying? I would never mess around as casually as you do, Mr. Petumian. Tell me exactly who is the one messing around, whether they're in heat or not. Please think it through. Who is it that changes partners every week? And who is it that's always cleaning up the mess for that person? Faced with the little secretary's roar, Petumian didn't even furrow his brow. Isn't this all just your job in the first place? Now, are you done yelling? You think you're so clean? Even if your skin is thick, there should be a limit. You're the trash who's out of control. Unfortunately, No amount of hoarse screaming can wake someone who pretends to be asleep. Shamelessly, Petumian lumped the two of them together as equally bad, then tossed out the most classic scumbag line. Everyone's enjoying it, aren't they? Don't you also quite like doing that kind of thing? He bent down close to Yonu, smiling in a way that was both suggestive and dangerous. Forgot already? Weren't you the one who cried while saying you liked it? And more than once. Yonu shot back coldly. You already have an omega, don't you? In any case, that person isn't me. As soon as this was mentioned, Petumian immediately exploded with anger. Yeah, some damn omega marked me and then ran off, and I still don't know where he's hiding now. But that's your reason for not being with me? Don't come closer. I told you not to touch me again. The scumbag man got more and more worked up as he spoke, and the next second he wanted to pin Yonu down and continue doing that kind of thing. The heat generated by the friction made Yonu's heart flutter with panic. In order to completely sever this embarrassing relationship, he bit himself directly. Petumian was also so startled by that move that he blanked out for a moment. The little secretary had just broken up with his scumbag boss, only to accidentally discover that he was pregnant with the boss's child. What on earth was going on? Picking up the thread, the little secretary, in order to preserve his innocence, actually chose to bite himself instead. The president looked at his bloody wound and completely panicked, mumbling over and over, "We have to call a doctor right now." The already frail little secretary couldn't withstand all this turmoil and quickly lost consciousness. He collapsed limply into Petumian's arms and passed out there in Petumian's embrace. When he woke up again, he was already lying in a hospital ward, and Petumian was keeping watch at his bedside. Suddenly, Yonu's head felt like it was splitting apart, as if it were about to explode. Seeing how miserable he was, that Sundar Petumian still said irritably, "Don't ever do that again." Hearing this, Yonu was filled with extreme disgust. Just who had driven him to this point? And he still had the nerve to stand here making sarcastic remarks. Who could have known that the always cold-hearted president would rarely show a hint of innocence? "I didn't expect you to hate me to this extent." At this moment, the doctor pushed the door open and came in, asking how Yonu was feeling now and whether there was anywhere uncomfortable. Yonu paused for a few seconds and still told the truth. He felt a little dizzy. He had originally thought it was just a minor problem like a cold, but in the next second, one sentence from the doctor stunned both him and Petumian. "That's normal. Many people have a bit of anemia in the early stages of pregnancy." Petumian could hardly believe his own ears. Yonu was actually pregnant. Yonu was equally incredulous. As soon as the doctor left, Petumian immediately rushed to ask if it was true, while the little secretary's mind was already in complete chaos. He suddenly recalled that night when things spun out of control. Could it be that Petumian just hit the mark in one go? But Petumian had been affected by pheromones at the time and had long forgotten what happened that night, so he could only hesitate and ask, "Whose child is this?" On one hand, he didn't want Petumian to find out that that person was actually himself, and on the other, he was unwilling to admit the child was Petumian's. So Yonu chose to lie. But Petumian just wouldn't believe that Yonu would get entangled with two people at the same time. "Didn't you say you were different from me?" Yonu found it funny. Clearly, the one who had first questioned where the child came from had been Petumian. Yet Petumian still refused to give up. "Impossible. There's no way you would let someone else. It was of my own free will." If you had to talk about a CEO failing at pursuing someone, his biggest failure would be this mouth of his. Do you really have to ask who the child's father is? The more he acted like this, the less Yonu wanted to tell the truth, and in a fit of pique he threw out, "It's not yours anyway." Rage nearly overwhelmed the man's reason. Gritting his teeth, he snarled at Yonu in a low voice, "If you're pregnant, then the child has to be mine. We slept together so many times, you know that better than anyone. How could it possibly be someone else's? You even said you liked me." Yonu really couldn't understand where this man got that kind of confidence. "What gives you the right to insist the child must be yours? I thought only Mr. Milleo liked to live in his dreams that much." His emotions swung too hard, and just as Yonu finished speaking, he fainted again. This bottom really has it too rough. He had just broken up with his ex-boyfriend in a tough, unyielding way, and the very next second he discovered there was a tiny life in his belly. What was even more absurd was that his clueless ex-boyfriend went ahead and locked him up. He even went crazy begging him to marry him, not even caring about the child in his belly, and was willing to be the one who takes over. So what would Yonu do? Keep reading. After Yonu passed out, he was taken back to the villa by Petumian, and from that moment on, his freedom was locked away. The butler told Yonu that only when Petumian came back could he leave. But Yonu knew very well that he was carrying the domineering CEO's child, and right now he just wanted to run away. He decided to use not feeling well as an excuse to resign. A few days later, Petumian returned to the villa. The moment Yonu saw him, he still couldn't help being nervous. As soon as the man opened his mouth, he asked how his body was, and Yonu instinctively replied, "Much better, thank you." But he immediately came back to his senses, and his heart suddenly sank. He was the one being locked up, so why was he still saying thank you to the culprit behind it all? Right then, Petumian suddenly said something about how the pheromones of a top alpha, even after having already marked someone, could still hurt a pregnant male or something along those lines. Hearing that, Yonu finally realized that the scent on Petumian had indeed become much fainter. Could it be that he was afraid the smell would trigger something like a miscarriage? So he simply got rid of his scent? Even if he thought the child might not be his, he still did that. Petumian admitted it calmly, but Yonu suddenly fell silent, as if his throat were blocked. Petumian then pressed him again about the loan. At this moment, Yonu's mind was so jumbled it went numb. He didn't want to answer at all. Unexpectedly, the excessively handsome man sitting across the table lightly said, "I'll help you repay the money." Today's Petumian is really acting very strange. Yonu couldn't help but ask, "Why are you interfering in my business?" He wanted to snap the man back to his senses. They had already broken up a long time ago, and on top of that, he was even pregnant with someone else's child. But the condition the man blurted out the next second completely stunned Yonu. "My condition is that you marry me. This is not a joke. I'll support you and the child." Someone actually rushing over to be the stepfather like this. This was the first time Yonu had ever seen it. What? This over-the-top, ridiculously well-built CEO, after hearing that his little secretary was pregnant, actually came over himself and said he wanted to be the child's father. He even wanted to pay off all the little secretary's debts, just so he could keep him by his side every day. After hearing the terms, Yonu didn't feel the slightest bit moved. Instead, he was so scared his face went pale. If the president knew that the child in his belly was originally his, then it would at least make some sense. But now he insisted on becoming the father of someone else's child. Why on earth was that? It wasn't until Petumian spoke the truth that Yonu was so angry he couldn't say a single word. "No one can satisfy me in that area more than you do." Yonu was shaking with anger. Even his hands were trembling. The man was doing all this just for that kind of reason? He told Petumian directly, "Marriage is not a joke. You have to respect each other and cherish each other. That's what marriage is." Yet Petumian shamelessly said that he used to think that way too, until he and Yonu had in-depth exchanges. Yonu didn't want to hear another word after that. In the end, this damned man was just lusting after his body. When Yonu opened his mouth, his tone unconsciously took on a mocking edge. "Do we really have to get married? Wouldn't it be enough for you to just pay for my body?" The CEO fell silent and thought for a moment and actually felt that this proposal was indeed not bad. Yonu was so angry at him that he was left speechless. After going through a not-so-friendly exchange, Yonu still decided to temporarily compromise for the time being. As for this unexpected child, Yonu did not welcome it. He even thought about getting rid of the child, but if he really did that, if the child learned the truth in the future, wouldn't it be heartbreaking? He was still torn up inside when the man opposite him suddenly asked out of nowhere, "Who is the child's father?" Yonu didn't want Petumian to notice anything amiss, so he had no choice but to grit his teeth and lie. "He's a very gentle, very kind person." Hearing his little secretary praise another man, Petumian suddenly felt an indescribable sense of crisis well up inside. "What does he do for a living?" In response, Yonu merely shot him a cold look. "Why should I tell you? I never thought you cared so much about other people's private lives." Only then did the jealous, domineering CEO stop pressing about the child's father. But he still reminded Yonu in a low voice to take care of things cleanly. He even threatened Yonu, "If you don't do it, I'll do it myself." That terrifying possessiveness of his pressed down on Yonu so hard it was almost impossible to breathe. If you want to ask what the secret is for a domineering CEO chasing his husband, it's just 2 words: buy everything. First, trick your wife. No, invite him into a physical store filled with nothing but luxury brand counters. Wrap up everything your eyes can sweep over. If your wife is moved and gently refuses, you still have to domineeringly drop to your knees on the spot. Only then will he feel that you really understand men, and that you really want to be a good husband. Faced with this kind of Petumian, Yonu truly had no countermeasures at all. Luckily, it wasn't his card being swiped. There was no talking him out of it, but only buying things for Yonu alone didn't feel right either. So Yonu simply took the initiative and said he wanted to help Petumian pick out a tie. Petumian was of course more than happy to cooperate. Yonu carefully picked for quite a while and took a liking to one with a pattern. As he stroked the texture, he asked Petumian, Do you like this? If you don't like it then. Before he could finish, Petumian directly took the tie from him. No, I really like it. He even deliberately emphasized his tone. Very much. That one line stirred Yonu's heart up even more. He hadn't expected a seasoned player in love to be able to express liking so directly and cleanly. It was inexplicably a little cute. Yonu pushed his feelings down and said irritably, "You're buying it with your own money." Petumian yanked the tie open in one pull and replied forcefully, "I know, all you need to do is pick. Help me tie my tie." Yonu reminded him that this tie didn't match the suit he was wearing now. Petumian looked completely indifferent and even urged Yonu to hurry up. Unable to refuse him, Yonu had no choice but to obediently walk over and help him with his tie, unaware that the man's gaze was fixed intently on him from beginning to end. The gentleness hidden in that gaze was something even Petumian himself hadn't noticed. Yonu looked at the easy-to-push-down, meek and delicate husband in front of him. The man finally couldn't suppress that surge of impulse and suddenly clamped down on his slender wrist. Yet he only said a low thank you, but that thank you instead made Yonu even more afraid. He was actually thanking him? Was he planning to do that sort of thing again? After he got home, a chat with the butler finally told him the DNA he had accidentally left on Petumian's clothes had been detected. It was just that no match had been found in the database comparison. But the butler felt that since the information had already been registered, one day it would be traced back. Yonu instantly panicked so much that he went cold. His secret really wouldn't stay hidden for much longer. Very soon, Petumian would know that the Omega he had marked was none other than Yonu himself. But when he thought about how today Petumian had actually accompanied him in person to buy a gift, this was a treatment none of his other lovers had ever received. For Yonu, this was an exception. Since he was going to run, before escaping he had to confirm one thing: whether this man was truly sincere toward him or not. Look, just to test the president's sincerity, he actually went this far. He even found some thug to attack him, thinking the deal had long since ended. But the thug didn't keep his word and once again stretched his filthy hands toward him. When he woke up in the hospital, his head was already wrapped in bandages. The butler asked how he was, whether he felt any better, but Yonu's first reaction was, "Did the baby in my belly get hurt?" The butler began to analyze the culprit's motives, and it was only at that moment that Yonu truly realized just how terrifying what he had just gone through really was. The conditions of the deal at the start were merely for a light roughing up, but that thug not only beat him until he was seriously injured, he even tried to forcibly take him. Sure enough, someone found last minute online is unreliable. Fortunately, it was all over now, yet he still couldn't help asking, "Butler, where is Petumian?" The butler replied, "Mr. Petumian was just in a very important meeting. He stepped out temporarily to deal with this matter, and after handling it, he went back to continue the meeting." "Yonu, you know how important today's meeting is, right? You clearly could have contacted me directly. Why did you insist on having Mr. Petumian come in person?" There was obvious reproach in his tone. He had no idea this was all a play deliberately staged by Yonu. Yonu had chosen this exact time. He wanted to test just how sincere this man really was. Not long after, as soon as the meeting ended, Petumian personally walked into the hospital room. Yonu's heart tightened. He had to confirm whether it had worked or not. He immediately put on a guilty and self-blaming look and said to Petumian, "I'm sorry for causing you trouble." Petumian frowned. "What are you talking about?" Yonu didn't back down. Instead, he pushed even harder, acting pitiful to the extreme. "When the accident happened, I felt as if someone had been next to me the whole time, asking questions over and over. I'm sorry. I knew full well you were in such an important meeting." Petumian was both angry and heartbroken. "You're still worrying about this now?" Yonu was about to speak, but forcibly stopped herself. Petumian irritably ruffled his hair, trying to suppress his anger. He said that he would personally keep a close eye on this matter, and he also repeated once more. He had already said that he would take responsibility for Yonu. Yonu seemed to be choked by his words, and again murmured an apology in the past when he heard words like "take responsibility." He only found them annoying, but now all he felt was a dull ache in his chest, because he knew very well that he had failed to protect Yonu. And now, what he still couldn't let go of the most was still Yonu's body. Yonu said his head was still spinning and his whole body hurt. Without a word being spoken, Petumian could tell at a glance. "Did you see that kid's face clearly?" Yonu tilted his head slightly, as if trying to avoid something, and shook his head. After that, no matter what else he was asked, he stubbornly refused to say another word. Petumian coaxed him, telling him to forget everything. Then he gritted his teeth and swore he would make those people pay the price, make it so they could not live yet could not die. Petumian's barely restrained ferocity sent a chill down Yonu's back. He looked at this man, the one who had once treated him with such contempt and disgust. Yet for his sake, this man had lost control to such an extent, as if he had really fallen in love with him. Petumian seemed to realize he had gone too far and was afraid of scaring the little secretary. So he hastily offered a few words of comfort and turned to leave. But then, the always restrained and reserved Yonu suddenly took the initiative to grab his hand. In an instant, Petumian's heart lit up, and he turned his hand over to hold that hand tightly. On the back of that fair, beautiful hand, he dropped one kiss after another. So light it was as if he were afraid of hurting him. Yet his gaze was deep and heavy, fixed straight on Yonu's face, which seemed on the verge of breaking. He couldn't help but lean in, yet he didn't realize that the eyes beneath him held not a trace of desire, only cool composure, as if he were examining his prey. From the moment Petumian turned back, Yonu understood. This man had fallen completely for him. The most anticipated part of the revenge was finally about to begin. In order to get back at the man before him who had once deceived him and toyed with his feelings, Yonu was finally going to take the last step of his plan. And at this very moment, Petumian still had no idea that the seemingly pure and docile little secretary in front of him was calculating how to leave him. Holding back his anger, he asked Yonu, "Why did you leave the hospital without a word? What are you really trying to do? Injured like this, he should be staying in the hospital obediently." Yet Yonu said there was something he absolutely had to say, and that he had to say it to Petumian in person. But his gaze kept sneaking over to watch every reaction on Petumian's face. Fortunately, his voice sounded the same as usual. As planned, he had to hook Petumian in step by step. Yonu stared at the man's gently swaying glass of red wine and murmured in a tone that sounded both resentful and aggrieved, "If I weren't pregnant, I could drink too." Petumian immediately shot down that idea. Yonu countered, "The child is the responsibility of both of us, but I'm the only one who has to be inconvenienced. Doesn't that count as unfair?" Petumian replied coolly, "Life is inherently unfair. Everything in this world is the same." After hearing that, Yonu just gave a small smile. "Just like how you got casually marked on the ear by some unknown Omega, and then the person vanished? Everything in this world is like that, isn't it?" Petumian said nothing, clearly not wanting to bring up this irritating matter, and drained the red wine in his glass in one go. Yonu asked curiously how it tasted, and Petumian was actually quite cooperative, really about to answer. But in the next second, the man reached for the wineglass not far away, his pale, slender fingertips rubbing slowly along the rim, picking up a touch of crimson wine. Right after that, he lightly hooked it with the soft tip of his tongue and tasted that flavor. When those clear, cool eyes that seemed to hold no desire at all met Yonu's in that moment, the air suddenly turned hot and restless, and the look in the man's eyes gradually darkened. Petumian raised his hand and made a "come here" gesture to him. The man obediently walked over. The two of them hugged each other. What comes after isn't suitable to watch, so we'll just skip it. At the very last moment, however, Petumian suddenly stopped. "You're mine, right? Say it, you're mine." Yonu's eyes carried a hint of drunkenness, and her voice trembled so much it could barely hold a tune. "It was yours." Petumian had completely fallen into this trap called love. Yet he didn't know that everything was a scheme by the person beneath him. Petumian was right. The one making a fool of you and wanting you is me, and the one who will abandon you in the end will also be me. To take revenge on the scumbag top who had deceived his feelings, the little secretary used himself as bait. This time, can he really escape from the palm of this man's hand? Once Petumian relaxed his guard, Yonu poured the specially prepared drug into the red wine. After Petumian finished drinking, he stared blankly at the wineglass, and Yonu's heart instantly leapt into his throat. Luckily, the man only thought the taste was strange and did not become suspicious. Finishing the drink wasn't enough. The greedy man even wanted a bit more dessert. Just then, it seemed the drug took effect and Petumian went limp all over and collapsed. Yonu watched him with a calm expression, as if everything was within his control. He deliberately asked Petumian, "Are you drunk on the red wine?" Petumian felt even more that something was wrong. Impossible, he had never been drunk up to now. The little secretary, however, directly laid it bare. "I'm the one who put something in there." Petumian even thought the little secretary was joking with him. But the person in front of him had an expression that was far too cold, as if laying the answer right before his eyes. What other reason could there be? "How are you feeling today? Are you satisfied?" Before the man could speak, Yonu continued on his own. "You should be very satisfied, after all. This is the last time with that Omega you left your mark on." Petumian's pupils suddenly trembled, as if he couldn't believe what he just heard, and Yonu went on. "You're the one who got me pregnant that day, and yet you've forgotten everything. I clearly warned you. If you use your pheromones on me, I won't endure it. Petumian's consciousness was going dark bit by bit, while Yonu moved close to him one final time. Yet his lips were as cold as a blade. I will get rid of the child. As long as I'm alive, whether it's yours or someone else's, I will never keep it, and you can forget about ever having an omega that belongs to you. The truth was right before his eyes. And on top of that, he heard with his own ears Yonu saying he would get rid of the baby. No one knew what Petumian was feeling at that moment. But Yonu didn't feel the slightest bit of regret. He only felt it was fair. The man had deceived him of his feelings, forcibly taken his body. How could he possibly keep this outcome that had appeared without love? Taking advantage of the night, Yonu dragged along the suitcase he had long since prepared and left the villa overnight. As for Petumian, he had already completely lost consciousness. The next day, the disguised Yonu went to find Yosi. Here's an extra note. Yosi is the bodyguard who had previously helped Yonu and is also Emma's older brother. Yonu doesn't beat around the bush. He opens his mouth and directly asks Yosi for help, while cautiously probing. Have you heard anything from Emma about the recent situation at the company? Yosi only knows that the company Yonu is with now has already fallen into complete chaos. His superior is looking for him everywhere. The moment Yonu hears this, his expression instantly freezes, and his fear can't be hidden at all. Fortunately, our warm-hearted Yosi doesn't like to press with questions. He just looks at Yonu and says, "How can I help you?" With Yosi's help, Yonu finds a private clinic. But because several months have already passed, the doctor says that if they really go through with the operation, the risks will be very high. Yet Yonu doesn't want to give birth to the child, so he directly picks the earliest available surgery date, and the doctor says that if Yonu is in a big hurry, he can also ask other hospitals. But right now, Yonu doesn't even have time to find a place to hide, let alone the time to start searching all over again. So Yonu can only nod and agree to set the date. After the two of them leave the clinic, Yonu lowers his voice and says thank you to Yosi. He still can't help asking Yosi, "Why are you willing to help me without asking anything?" Yosi smiled gently, as if first making sure she would not offend him, then said, "In my opinion, Yonu, you are not that bold. If you weren't pregnant, I'm afraid that even if you came here, I still wouldn't be able to help you. We're just two people who are equally miserable." At night, the noise outside forcibly jolted Yonu awake. He lifted the curtains for a look and saw Petumian's bodyguards gathered downstairs outside the rental building. There was no need to think about it. They were obviously here to catch him. Yonu immediately packed his things, ready to run. But the moment he stepped out the door, a shout exploded behind him. "He's over there!" Yonu bolted. He slipped into a rental room whose door happened to be unlocked. Luckily, everyone inside was dead drunk and completely out of it. No one drove him away. At this moment, the middle-aged neighbor next door, unable to stand the noise, rushed out and started furiously cursing at those men. Taking advantage of the chaos, Yonu tried to slip away, but was still spotted by the bodyguards. They chased downstairs, but suddenly couldn't see any trace of Yonu, and, anxious, they started shouting loudly, "Yonu, please come out. Let's talk. Damn it. Why do you have to torture us like this?" Yonu curled up in a clump of bushes, trembling with fear, not even daring to breathe too loudly, terrified that making a sound would get him caught. Right at that moment, his stomach started to hurt badly. Could something be wrong with the baby? In the next second, he crushed that thought. No way. The child would be gone sooner or later anyway. And if that really was the case, just as he was thinking this, one of the bodyguards outside suddenly cried out in surprise, as if they had been drawn away by some other disturbance. Once again, Yonu narrowly escaped disaster. He didn't dare go home. He held out until dawn, then wandered, dazed, into the family restaurant. His face was so deathly pale that even the waiters were stunned. Thinking of how Yosi had been calling nonstop and he hadn't answered, Yonu immediately called back. The moment the call connected, Yosi tensed up with nerves and repeatedly asked Yonu if he was okay and where he was right now. As soon as she heard that no one was with Yonu, Yosi immediately told him to stay where he was and not run around, and to avoid showing his face as much as possible. Yosi's panic only made Yonu even more uneasy, so he asked point blank, "What on earth is going on?" Just then, the TV suddenly cut in with breaking news, and the face on the screen was actually his own. That damned bastard Petumian announced, "Whoever finds you will receive a huge bounty." The amount was so absurdly high it made winning the lottery look small, so now everything was in chaos. "Yonu, what on earth did you do to Petumian?" On the other end of the line, Yonu was completely stunned. The news said he was the man who stole the president's little tadpoles and that he was wanted for a huge reward. The chase from the previous night had drained Yonu until he was nothing but an empty shell. But when he woke up, he found that at some point the restaurant had already become packed with people. At that moment, a strange man suddenly leaned over to strike up a conversation with him. Yonu immediately turned his face away, pretending he didn't hear and refusing to pay the man any attention. Yoshi's words echoed in his ears like a curse. As long as they find you, they can get more money than winning the lottery. He stood up, wanting to hide in the restroom for a while and hold out until Yoshi arrived. But who would have thought that the group at that table just now would block his way? The red-haired one in the lead spoke with a wicked grin. "Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Stay and chat with me for a bit. You're alone too, right?" "No, my friend will be here any minute." The red-haired punk gave a roguish grin. "How long is any minute? I've only seen you alone since just now." As he spoke, he reached out and slung his arm around Yonu's shoulders. The dark-skinned guy next to him laughed lewdly. "Come chat with us a bit, yeah? You're pretty bored anyway, aren't you?" Yonu struggled with all his might. The redhead simply shoved him straight down onto the sofa. They started quietly discussing whether he was an omega or not. The red-haired leader sounded certain. His pheromones are this strong. He'd have to be. Then he lewdly pressed Yonu. "Are you in heat? The whole place reeks of you." Right after that, he pulled out that wanted notice and held the photo up, comparing it to Yonu's face. Yonu went pale, but still forced himself to insist they had the wrong person. In the end, he was shoved down hard again, his back nearly slamming so hard his vision went black. The redhead's lips curled, his smile turning even more sinister. Yonu's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Cold sweat trickled down Yu's forehead. The other people in the bar noticed the commotion and also realized Yonu was the one the rich man was looking for. For that huge reward, everyone instantly broke into a brawl. Seeing things go south, the redhead immediately tried to drag Yonu away. The crowd caught on too and instantly closed in to cut him off. With no way out, the redhead actually took Yonu hostage. One of his companions, eyes red with greed, swung a chair and knocked the redhead flat. Taking advantage of the chaos, Yonu bolted into the restroom. The noisy shouting outside terrified Yonu so much that he clamped his hands over his ears. What was he supposed to do now? There was nowhere left to run. But not long after, all the ruckus outside the door suddenly stopped, leaving only an eerie silence hanging in the air. Yonu held his breath and slowly moved toward the door. Suddenly, a deep male voice sounded right against the door panel. "Hey, you're Yonu, right? Yoshi sent me." Yonu was half in doubt, his hand resting on the doorknob, but he didn't dare turn it. "Hey, I'm busy. If you don't come out, I'm leaving. I'll count to 3. If you're still not out when I'm done, I'm gone." When the man was about to reach 3, Yonu panicked and yanked the door open. A burly man was standing in the doorway, with a thug dangling from his hand. He carried a kind of mature, oppressive aura that rolled in like a wave of heat. Yonu froze. Those little goons outside had all been taken down by him alone. The man's name was Dini Sasaikyu, a friend of Yoshi, but Yonu still didn't quite dare to believe him. After all, there were too many people trying to catch him. What was strange, though, was that Yonu kept feeling Dini looked a bit familiar. Fresh from the fight, Dini casually ran a hand through his hair. Dini frowned and shot him a glare, and Yonu's heart gave a jolt as he finally remembered. This was the man who had been on the cover of last year's firefighter calendar. After leaving the restaurant, Yonu followed Dini to his place. Before they went in, Dini first asked, "Are you allergic to cats?" Yonu shook his head. "Then come in. Even if you're allergic, it doesn't matter." "Darling." Yonu froze for a moment, not quite understanding. He saw the tall, broad-shouldered man move with surprising gentleness as he picked up a small yellow cat. "Her name is Darling. When I'm not here, you're responsible for taking care of her." Danny paused for a moment. "That's the condition for you being allowed to live here." Then Danny showed him around each room, and specifically reminded him that the kitten was blind in one eye and deaf as well. He warned Yonu to watch his step when he walked. Yonu, however, hesitated, wanting to ask, "Then where do I sleep?" The man seemed to see right through him. "You don't actually think that just because I'm a firefighter who serves the people, I have to give my room up to you, do you?" Yonu immediately explained, "Absolutely not. I just don't know where I'm supposed to sleep." Danny raised his hand and pointed at the sofa, his meaning very clear. "You'll sleep here." He then pressed on, asking Yonu why he didn't take inhibitors. Yonu stammered, "Because of the child. The doctor said it's best if I don't take them." The man only replied with one sentence, "Oh, okay." With that, the man strode off on his long 1.8-meter legs. Yonu let out a soft sigh. Sure enough, this child couldn't be kept. A wave of stabbing pain once again shot uncontrollably through his abdomen. In his heart, Yonu whispered, "I'm sorry." For some time after that, he didn't go out again. Every so often, Danny would bring a man or a woman home and drink himself senseless. Most of them just stayed for one night without any special treatment. But at least during these days, he could get a free breakfast. Danny had said not to ask about his business, and the more Yonu thought about it, the more confused he became, completely unable to figure it out. But it was also thanks to Danny that Yonu could live here in relative comfort. After another N days, only when Yosi reminded him did Danny finally remember. He had to take Yonu to the hospital. But right now it was really inconvenient. The whole of North America was practically plastered with Yonu's picture. Danny even joked that not even the president was as famous as him. Yonu stayed silent, looking unwell. He was the one causing trouble for everyone. Danny asked Yonu what he planned to do about the child. If he decided to abort it, Danny could immediately clear his schedule to accompany him. Knowing he couldn't delay any longer, Yonu asked Danny to go to the hospital with him. In order not to stand out so much, Yonu and Danny pretended to be a couple and even deliberately wore matching couple outfits. One has to say, the two of them really have good taste. These clothes suit them perfectly. It's simply like a wild, cool, and cocky boyfriend accompanying his gentle, delicate little husband on a shopping trip. The receptionist looked at the two of them, as if they had walked out of a painting, unable to hide the envy in her tone, and her service was especially attentive. "You've arrived even earlier than your appointment time. You're aware of all the precautions, right? Is there anything else you'd like to ask?" Yonu hunched his shoulders a little, still afraid of this kind of thing. But he forced himself to say there was no problem, and then came the long wait. Sitting on the hospital bench, Yonu kept telling himself over and over, "Just hold on a bit longer, it'll be over soon." But then a strange sensation suddenly came from his abdomen. Yonu gently placed a hand on his belly. Just now. Was that the baby moving? According to common sense, an omega's belly won't show a clear bulge until right before delivery, and they might not even realize they are pregnant. This was the first time Yonu felt the baby move, and that wondrous sensation instantly filled his chest. So during all those days when he was ready to give up, this child had also been steadily growing. Just then, Danny beside him suddenly slapped him on the shoulder, and Yonu was so startled that he jolted. Turned out it was already Yonu's turn so soon, and the medical staff were going to take him to the changing room. He didn't know if it was just his imagination, but from the moment he stood up to leave, that movement disappeared. Yonu's heart tightened for no reason, and he panicked badly. His revenge would soon be over. Once Petumian was marked, he would never be able to have children with another omega again, and he would never again smell anyone else's scent. He would be alone forever, just like Yonu. Yet all of this was something he had brought about with his own hands. But Yonu's breathing instantly went out of control. He instinctively, desperately shielded the baby in his belly. The next second, his tears burst out. He couldn't even tell whether he hated himself for losing his nerve at the last moment, or hated himself for about to strangle his unborn baby with his own hands. He forced himself in his heart. "Because you hate Petumian, are you not even going to spare the child?" Yonu was in such pain that he collapsed to his knees, frightening the nearby medical staff. They immediately arranged a virus test for Yonu. Considering that the pregnant man's emotions were unstable, the doctor asked him if he wanted to postpone it to next time. "No, I'm not doing it." The moment the words left his mouth, Yonu understood as well. He had decided to give birth to this child. This poor Omega had accidentally gotten pregnant with a scumbag's child. He had originally planned to abort the baby, but at the very last moment he lost his nerve. After leaving the hospital, Danny asked Yonu, "Are you really confident you won't regret this in the future?" Yonu didn't answer. In fact, he wasn't confident, but he couldn't bring himself to abandon it either. Seeing how hesitant he looked, Danny raised his voice and pressed him again. "I'm asking you, are you confident you won't resent him while you're raising him?" It was as if Yonu had finally made up his mind. He replied very slowly and stiffly, "I'll do my very best to treat him well, no matter what happens." "Is that so? Can I really trust an Omega's words?" Danny let out a low chuckle, stepped right past him, and strode away. Sometimes Yonu really couldn't figure out what Danny was thinking. Back home, Yonu stared at the newspaper in his hand and suddenly recalled the days when he used to go to work. He had clearly liked that job a lot. It would be great if he could go back. But the most important thing now was to prepare for the future first. Since he had decided to keep this child, Yonu started to think, maybe it would be better to just go live in a small village. As he pondered this, he searched the web for a suitable village. But the more he looked, the more his gaze was unintentionally dragged away by the top headline that popped up on the page. The face of the man in the news photo was the one he knew better than any other. That man. Has he finally found the right person? Even without Yonu, Petumian is still living very well. Yonu only felt as if his chest were being forcibly torn open, cold wind howling straight into the gap. Thinking back on how he had almost taken Petumian's obsession seriously, it was downright laughable based on what did he have that was worth Petumian going that far. So all of this was probably how it was meant to be. But what on earth was wrong with him now? Why did it hurt so much? Danny came home from work and found that not even the lights were on in the house. His heart sank. Something felt wrong. What's wrong with you? When the light came on, the glare made Yonu squint in discomfort. Darling, your spot's been taken, Danny said as he scooped up the cat and casually sat down beside Yonu. He pretended not to care, but inside he had been worrying about Yonu the whole time. What are you doing? Did something happen? Yet Yonu wouldn't say a word. Danny could tell at a glance that his complexion was off and reached out to feel his forehead. The next second, Danny almost jumped up on the spot. Holy crap, that's burning. Don't tell me you've got COVID? Stay away from me, back. Quarantine, you need to quarantine right now. The delicate spouse who tried to run off with a bun in his arms still ended up being tracked down by the CEO. This time, can Yonu still manage to escape smoothly? Picking the story back up, we find that Yonu has fallen ill, and Danny immediately helps him lie down. Who would have thought Danny was so scatterbrained that he actually brought the wrong medicine, which amused Yonu so much that he burst out laughing on the spot. He brought over the cup and the medicine, scratching his head awkwardly. Yonu softly said thank you to him. Maybe the fever had really kicked in. Yonu couldn't use any strength in his hands at all and couldn't even tear open the medicine packet. Danny couldn't stand watching anymore and directly grabbed the medicine packet from him. He told Yonu to say something if it tasted bad. But the fever-dazed Yonu was especially honest and immediately blurted out, "It's bad." Just as he was about to keep drinking, he suddenly stopped again. "What is it now? I am pregnant. I don't think I can drink this." Danny had no choice but to hand him a cup of hot water. He told him to drink it and rest for a bit first. Danny had never taken care of anyone before, let alone someone who was an Omega. But when he looked at Yonu's fever-flushed face, an emotion called heartache suddenly welled up in his chest for no reason. His heart was soft, but his mouth was still hard. "People like you are the most annoying. Even putting on a face like you can't live without me. Damn it. They actually dumped someone like this on me." Yonu didn't hear a word he was saying. With his brain scrambled by the fever, he soon couldn't hold on and fell asleep. The chaotic night passed just like that. The next day, Danny asked him, "Feeling any better? Is there anything you want to eat?" Yonu barely thought and blurted it out. "Pudding, caramel." Danny was a bit confused. Did he mean caramel pudding? He asked Yonu, "Are you sure you want to eat that?" Yonu didn't want to trouble him and said that if it was inconvenient, then forget it. Danny usually wore an impatient expression, but in fact, he was someone whose heart softened very easily. He told Yonu to rest first, then went out alone himself. Before long, the half-asleep Yonu, dozing in a daze, heard a knocking at the door. He thought Danny had come back, forced himself up, and went to open the door. But as soon as the door opened, the person standing outside was not Danny, but the one he'd been desperately trying to avoid. How did Petumian manage to find this place? Just after she went to the hospital, ready to abort the little bun, the CEO showed up at the door. Yunu's eyes were full of terror. How had Petumian found him? But this was obviously not the time to think about that question. The man's face was dark as he approached step by step. Yunyu dragged his weak body, stumbling as he tried to escape. Yet at this very moment, Yunu's legs buckled, and his whole body collapsed to the ground. "Where are you trying to run this time?" The man forced his anger down into his voice, making Yunyu tremble uncontrollably. "Didn't I tell you? Don't use your pheromones on me." "Fine, but right now the only one who reacts to my pheromones is you. So what if I did use them?" The man's voice was like a devil whispering in his ear. "Yun, you didn't even have the strength to argue back. You didn't get my consent, and you went and left your mark on me, then even dared to run away. So why should I be lenient with you? What do you mean it's not my child? Weren't you the one who left the mark? And now you're pretending otherwise." Pitumin yanked Yunyu by the collar, brutally dragging him up to face him. He spoke through gritted teeth. "You little liar. Talk. Let's hear it. I really want to know what story you're going to make up this time. How did you find this place? You think I don't know you transferred hospitals, got rid of my child, and then started seeing that guy? After making me suffer so much, you just ran off to live an easy life?" Yunyu struggled desperately, only to completely ignite Pitumin's fury. "Stop dreaming. It's over now. I found you and you're not getting away. You're mine, my Omega. You actually dared to go with that damned guy to get rid of my child." As Pitumin spoke, he became more and more out of control, and his pupils were dyed gold. He bent down as if proclaiming his sovereignty and bit Yunyu's ear hard. Yunyu shrank back from the pain, but didn't have a shred of strength to resist. Pitumin had originally wanted to cover up the scent of the other alpha on Yunyu's body, but only after biting did he realize that there wasn't any mark left on Yunyu at all. What on earth is going on? Isn't it said that when love rivals meet, they're the likeliest to see red? Two sharp-tongued and arrogant people crashing into each other head-on. Who on earth can overpower whom? As soon as the topic picked up, Yunyu looked at the absent-minded Pitumin in front of him and suddenly remembered what Milio had said. An alpha's mark on an omega might not even count, because it will gradually fade. It might also be overwritten by another alpha. It's the omegas who are truly ruthless. With one mark, they can occupy a person for a lifetime. Although Yunyu didn't understand the reason, what Milio said was indeed true, and it was far too pointless to get hung up on it now. The man scooped him up without caring about anything else, but the moment he touched him, the burning heat of the body in his arms almost made his hands slip. Fever? A cold? Yunyu didn't want to have any entanglement with him, nor did he need this inexplicable concern. Whether it was a cold or something else, it had nothing to do with you. Go to the party and find some other woman to have fun with. The little secretary's words were openly sour, yet Pitumin replied with complete seriousness. My omega is you. Yunyu turned his head away with a look of disgust. Are you trying to say that ever since I ran away, you haven't touched anyone else? You think I'm going to believe that? Believe it or not, it's the truth. Yunyu had thought that Pitumin had finally become sensible, but then this so-called genius showed his true colors again, coming out with straight-up scumbag talk. I didn't do it, but I did think about it, because I wanted to confirm whether it's you who's special or if all male omegas are like this. Yunyu fell silent on the spot. Is this man's brain even worse than he thinks? Or does he just completely look down on him? But right now, Yunyu could do nothing about Pitumin and could only be forced to follow along. And just at this moment, Dini rushed back at the last second. Is this a kidnapping? In fact, the moment Dini looked over, he saw Yunyu in the car. But Yunyu was being completely suppressed by the pheromones. Let alone raising his hand, he couldn't even move a single finger, much less greet Dini or thank him. As the saying goes, when love rivals meet, tempers flare first. Pitumin arrogantly declared his ownership first. I'm just taking back what's mine. If we're going to talk about crimes, then you're the one who stole my property. Fine, he really does know how to turn the tables. Dini was of course unwilling to accept that, and replied coldly that he was only helping a pitiful omega escape from a bad person. Hearing this veiled sarcasm, Pitumin threw out what he thought was his harshest comeback. He has my child in his belly. To his surprise, Dini gave a contemptuous smile. Oh, then it seems he hates the idea of you being the child's father. As soon as those words fell, Pitumin tore up the last shred of his manners on the spot. Shut up! You should be grateful I haven't drunk you dry, and that I'm still letting you stand here. Get lost. What, not going to try? Dini was even more ruthless, provocatively pointing at his own chest. Come on, my neck is right here. My heart is right here. With a sharp clack, Pitumin shut the car door. For the first time ever, he didn't rush forward to beat someone up, but simply turned around and walked away. Dini still wanted to throw a few more barbs, but Pitumin clearly had no intention of getting entangled. Pitumin knew very well that if he really laid a hand on Dini, there would be absolutely no way to persuade Yunyu. Before leaving, he even put on an air of kindness and wished the other man good health. Dini was just as blunt, telling Pitumin he'd better thank the security squad. Otherwise, he would definitely have beaten him to a pulp. The two men's gazes locked, the air seemed to ignite, and the smell of gunpowder was on the verge of exploding. No sooner had this silent standoff ended than Pitumin got into the car, his gaze never leaving Yunyu. Yunyu, however, turned his face toward the window, stubbornly refusing to look at him. His head was filled only with worry for Dini. What he said out loud was just advice, but actually that was a threat. It was more like reminding himself, if you dare run away again, I won't let anyone around you off. Yunyu, who had finally managed to escape, was caught back again by the president. Pitumin asked coldly how long he and Dini had been together, and Yunyu snapped back, do you want to ask how long we've known each other? Or do you want to ask when I've done that kind of thing with him? So then what he wanted to ask was, when did I ever do a nucleic acid test with him? But he still suppressed his temper and asked the latter first. Then why don't you go to someone else? Who could have known that all he would get in return was, I have no obligation to answer you. Once again, the president was shut out at the door. This only made him more anxious. He had to know just how far things had gone between those two. You keep desperately running away, Yet, in the end you move into that punk's place. Yeonyu sneered and said that thanks to a certain someone, he was now wanted nationwide. He confronted Pitumin on the spot. When did you find out about Dini? What gives you the right to investigate people at will? In fact, Pitumin had already found out where he lived long ago, and immediately went to dig into Dini. The results showed that kid was a real mess. Rumor had it he changed partners every day, and would even sleep with others right in front of you. 3 at a time, no less. Yeonyu only found it laughable. What is this supposed to be? Smearing Dini in front of me? Dini sleeping with someone in front of me? What does that have to do with you? Yeonyu's tone grew even colder. It's not like it's the first time. That sentence directly ignited Pitumin's jealousy. So now you're taking that kid's side, and then turning around to scold me? Yeonyu couldn't understand what right Pitumin had to be getting angry at him here. When it came to who was truly debauched, Pitumin knew best himself. Yeonyu had always been the one managing his schedule in the past, right? Once your pheromones flare up, you don't remember anything. Is that it? Pitumin was left so choked by the retort that he couldn't say a single word. Cursing him hard enough and thoroughly enough, Yeonyu actually felt much better inside. Pitumin awkwardly turned his head to the side, playing dead like an ostrich. I think, if you were like everyone else, my feelings for you would fade. Yeonyu froze on the spot. What kind of logic is that? Then why don't you go find someone else? Don't you hate me? Why do you still come to me? In order to win his wife back, Pitumin even exposed the hidden pain he had never revealed to anyone. The little brother didn't react at all. Yeonyu burst out on the spot. What the hell? What did you just say? Pitumin kept going. At first I wasn't even sure it was because of you. I thought it was just because I'd held back for too long. But the moment I saw you, he didn't notice that the little secretary next to him, their eyes had already changed, was looking at him like he was some kind of pervert. At this moment, the Tsundere CEO suddenly slammed his fist against the car window, annoyed at himself for even explaining all this. Ever since he met Yeonyu, he had become less and less like his former self. Yeonyu's gaze also dimmed. What use is there in saying these things now? Those hurtful words will not disappear. They will only keep clinging to him, tormenting him again and again. Yeonyu really wanted to curse. What the fuck? He just kept tormenting Yeonyu like this, non-stop. As soon as the little kept lover entered the hotel, he felt so hot that he directly took off his clothes, leaving the CEO beside him at a total loss. It turned out there was a problem with the road conditions, so after the CEO caught the runaway little Baozi Rue, he couldn't go straight home. Instead, he took him to a hotel he frequented. He had just set his sick wife down on the bed, when the wife started undoing his clothes and even asked him, "If I pour hot water into the thermos twice, will that be enough?" Pitumin's head was full of question marks. What on earth is going on in his own wife's head? Yeonyu sneered inwardly. Man, isn't this exactly what you want? What are you pretending to be such a gentleman for? Still pretending. This time the CEO truly had no way to defend himself. Didn't I already say it? I won't touch you when you're sick. I won't touch you when you're sick. If you're planning to hold back now and then go find someone else later, why not just... He suddenly remembered what Pitumin had said in the car, that he only had feelings for him. Was that true? Pitumin replied almost without hesitation. It's true. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't change the fact. Your lover will definitely be thrilled when she hears this, right? Yeonyu said icily, laced with mockery. Pitumin, however, was completely baffled. Lover? Acting dumb again the moment he sees a man? Blinded by rage, Yeonyu blurted out what he had seen. Pitumin's recent romantic scandal, laying everything on the table. Only then did Pitumin understand, and he immediately explained. That was his father. He had always hated the man, but someone had to keep an eye on him, and the unlucky one chosen for the job was him. The more he talked, the more flustered he became, his tone even sounding like a child's, and he couldn't help complaining to Yeonyu. He hadn't been able to find Yeonyu in time because his father had held him up, so it had all been a misunderstanding on Yeonyu's part. Yeonyu was so mortified he could barely stand, wishing he could disappear on the spot. Afraid he might catch a cold, Pitumin gently draped his coat over Yeonyu. Do you feel a bit warmer now? This high and mighty CEO had never taken care of anyone before, and was now fretting over how to bring down Yeonyu's fever. Go look it up online. The CEO froze for half a second. Rarely, Yeonyu was finally willing to talk to him. In the middle of the night, Yeonyu watched the man who was still looking things up, but his thoughts slowly drifted away. This man seemed even thinner, and fiercer too. The man quickly noticed his gaze and asked what he wanted. While his mouth kept reciting a bunch of precautions for pregnant husbands, you could tell he had really done his research. Pitumin took Yeonyu's temperature. After confirming the fever had gone down, he asked Yeonyu what he wanted to eat. Yeonyu didn't say a single word. Suddenly, the man asked, How about pudding? Yonu was stunned. Petumian actually knew his taste. Yonu thought it was just something said in passing, but unexpectedly, there really was pudding. It was the first time he had seen a hotel minibar stocked with pudding. Petumian said he had asked the lobby manager to buy it specially and put it in there. Petumian said he guessed that even if Yonu didn't miss him, he might at least miss that fridge. Yonu gave an awkward smile, indicating he didn't want to talk. But then again, could this man really be that attentive? Everything he had done since bringing him back was something Yonu couldn't make sense of. Yonu couldn't help asking Petumian, all this time, how did you get through your heats? No matter what Petumian said, Yonu wouldn't be hurt. He just wanted to confirm. Petumian had always been this kind of person, but when he heard Petumian say, it came twice, his body still reacted honestly. Petumian told him that at that time he'd had terrible luck and had been stranded alone on an island. The doctor said that because the mark was there, his pheromones had stabilized, so it was easier to endure his heats. It must have still been really painful. If only I could have been with you back then. I wouldn't have asked for anything else. Petumian didn't tell Yonu that during those days. He thought of Yonu many times. He could only think of him, but not touch. He might as well have gone completely mad back then. But that wouldn't happen now. Yonu couldn't understand. As long as he didn't die, Petumian's pheromones would never threaten him again. So why was Petumian still in so much pain? The man lifted his hand to touch Yonu's face, a hurt look in his eyes. Because you don't love me anymore. Yonu gave a bitter smile. Does my feelings even matter? You're the one who decided you didn't need me and threw me away. Before he could finish, Petumian's hand suddenly froze. He couldn't say another word. He only asked Yonu, did I go looking for you that day? That day referred to the rainy night when they had slept together. Petumian doesn't remember what happened that night. Only now does he realize that the person he bullied was Yonu, and he's filled with regret and self-blame. Why didn't you fight back? Because of the pheromones, I couldn't fight back. I could only do the one thing I was able to do, so you marked me. That means from now on you can't mark anyone else. I have no idea what's going on in that top's head. You're the one who got marked, so the initiative is in our Yonu's hands now. Yonu doesn't indulge him either, letting out a soft laugh. But what does that matter? I'm the only omega for you, but for me, you're not the only alpha. The more arrogant the first half is, the more miserable the later wife-chasing becomes. Petumian's expression at this moment is exactly the revenge outcome Yonu most wanted to see. But why does he feel so empty? As if he can't grasp anything at all. The CEO finally manages to win his wife back, only to be kidnapped on the way home. Turns out that because of road conditions, the two of them didn't set out for the return trip until the next day. Bored, Yonu looked out the window, and in the next second he saw a wildfire break out on a nearby mountainside, blazing with danger. The more he thought about it, the more wrong it felt. Why wasn't the driver changing routes, and instead deliberately detouring into such a remote place? At first, Yonu even thought this had been arranged by Petumian. Furious, he told Petumian to order the driver to stop, but Petumian pretended not to understand, watching him with a half-smile, like he was teasing a little cat with its fur all puffed up, until he saw the terrifying seriousness on Yonu's face. Petumian could only order the driver to stop the car, but the usually honest and silent driver suddenly acted strange and completely ignored Petumian's command. Yonu also instantly sensed that something was wrong. Could it be they really had been kidnapped? Before he had time to think it through, the driver suddenly slammed his foot all the way down on the gas. The car lurched forward, and Yonu was so terrified that he immediately wrapped his arms around his head, desperately trying to protect himself. At this very moment, the man wrapped his gentle yet strong arms around him, pulling his whole body into his embrace, and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm right here by your side." Listening to the man's steady heartbeat, Yonu's own heart began to race out of control. Petumian lowered his voice and told him that the bodyguard's car behind them had already disappeared, meaning that now they could only rely on themselves. He gave Yonu a reassuring smile. Then he pressed a hidden button inside the car. A secret compartment popped open, and inside was a real gun fully loaded with bullets. Yonu was so shocked he couldn't speak. When had Petumian installed something like this in the car? He clearly hadn't heard any instructions about it. Right after that, Petumian scooped Yonu up in his arms. The moment he pulled him tightly into his embrace, Yonu shut his eyes in fear, as if entrusting his entire being to the man before him. The man did not let him down. With a single whip kick, he directly kicked the door of the Maybach open. Holding Yonu in his arms, he twisted his body and leaped out of the car. By the time Yonu opened his eyes again, Petumian was already covered in wounds. Yet the first thing he said was still to ask Yonu whether he was hurt. In this kind of situation, Yonu instead let out a sudden biff of laughter, not even knowing himself what he was laughing at. Was he laughing at how easily he was moved by the man who had once hurt him the most, or laughing at the man in front of him for being so ridiculously foolish? But the speeding Maybach didn't give them any time for tenderness at all. The gas pedal was slammed to the floor, and it charged straight toward the two of them. Petumian immediately shielded Yonu behind him, lifted his hand in a feint of a shot, and the next second hit the tire with perfect accuracy. The car instantly went out of control, swerving sharply away and crashing into the hillside beside them. Just then, because of the wildfire, a large section of the mountain slope began to crack open. Petumian scooped Yonu up in his arms and hurriedly retreated toward a safe area. Clenching his teeth, he struggled to carry Yonu to the base of a tree. The bodyguards happened to get through to them as well, but even worse, the bodyguards judged that there might be a landslide nearby, and the two of them had to immediately head for an open area to take cover. Yonu said he could walk on his own, but Petumian used "Yonu has a cold" as his excuse and refused to agree no matter what. It was clearly just a minor cold, yet the man was as tense as if he were marching onto a battlefield, leaving Yonu both crying and laughing at once. But under Yonu's repeated insistence, Petumian finally compromised and let Yonu walk while holding his hand. This time, Yonu did not hesitate and directly reached his hand out, because he knew all too well, when danger closed in, the owner of this hand had once given him immense courage, so if Petumian were to confess to him now, I would definitely believe him, wouldn't I? Unfortunately, there is no if in life. Boom. With a loud bang, the ground jolted violently. In that most dangerous second, Yonu threw all his strength forward and, without the slightest hesitation, shoved the man away. By the time Petumian snapped out of his shock, his lover had already been swallowed by smoke and dust. Perhaps only when standing before the parting of life and death can a person finally admit their true feelings. The sudden landslide left them with no way out. At that critical moment, Yonu once again pushed Petumian aside, and he himself was buried directly under the soil and rubble. Fortunately, the rescue team arrived in time and immediately rushed the two of them to the hospital. Looking at the gravely injured, unconscious Yonu, Petumian was frantic with panic, afraid his lover would just sleep on like this and never wake again. He called Yonu's name over and over, trying to pull his consciousness back. As if heaven had heard his prayer, Yonu, still in a coma, trembled as he forced open his heavy eyelids. The images from right before he lost consciousness suddenly flooded back into his mind. He remembered it was a landslide they had encountered. Petumian should be fine, right? This worried question had not yet made it to his lips, when a bloody taste suddenly surged up his throat. He couldn't help coughing violently. That blinding red stabbed straight into Petumian's heart. The man lowered his head, and his pupils constricted in an instant. From beneath Yonu's body, warm fluid was continuously seeping out. Petumian's mind went completely blank. He couldn't even answer when Yonu asked, "How is the baby?" Yonu seemed to understand something, and his tears fell straight down. "At first, I wanted to get rid of him because I was so scared, but later I wanted to keep him, because he was your child. He would definitely be very beautiful." Listening to his lover talk about all those beautiful expectations for the child, Petumian desperately suppressed the pain in his heart and still comforted him first. "It's okay. You'll be fine, and don't worry about the baby." But at the moment when the person in his arms weakly looked up at him, this man who had once been all-powerful, arrogant, and conceited still couldn't hold back, and his tears fell. Yonu's hand trembled as he tried to touch that tear. The man seemed to understand, and wrapped Yonu's cold, pale hand in his large palm. He even took the initiative to press his cheek into Yonu's palm. Yonu coaxed him like a child, telling him not to cry, but the man only lost control even more. "Why did you do that? Why did you push me away? Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. Wake up. Just hold on a little longer. We'll be at the hospital soon. I'm begging you." Yonu's voice grew fainter and fainter. "If I die, this will disappear. You didn't do anything wrong. You really didn't do anything wrong. It was all my delusion. All of it was my delusion. It was me who assumed that you loved me. I'm sorry I marked you without your consent." Maybe he felt that his revenge on Petumian had already been cruel enough, so the soft-hearted Yonu ultimately took all the blame onto himself. This way, even if he died, Petumian would still be able to go on living. He finally seemed to let out a sigh of relief and slowly closed his eyes. In his ears, only the man's hoarse, tearing shouts remained. "Yonu, please, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me." At last, they had come to the final outcome. Yonu was rushed to the hospital in time, and the baby was very strong too. Although they still needed to keep observing, at least they had made it through the most dangerous stage. Right now, the most important thing for Yonu is to rest well. He had come so close to tasting the pain of losing his lover. After that, Petumian became even more anxious and nervous about Yonu, especially when he saw Yonu with that injured face. And yet he still smiled and said thank you to him. Petumian would still uncontrollably recall the thrill and danger of that day. Don't do that again next time. The man's tone was firm as he repeated it, forcing Yonu to promise. From now on, he was not allowed to do such dangerous things again. But how could Yonu possibly be that obedient? He didn't want to be the kind of Omega who could only hide behind his alpha whenever danger appeared. The general idea was, I know I was wrong, but I might still do the same thing next time. Even if Petumian was angry, he couldn't bear to really come down hard on his own wife. He raked his hand through his hair in frustration. What do you actually want me to do? For fuck's sake, say it. But Yonu didn't understand why he suddenly exploded. He only hoped the man would be safe. What he got in return was the man's suppressed, bewildered plea. Next time, don't do that kind of thing for me again. I'm begging you. All right? As soon as he finished speaking, the man turned around and walked out of the ward. This awkward married couple clearly cared a lot about each other. Yet neither of them could bring themselves to say it. After that, the butler came to visit Yonu. It was only from the butler that Yonu learned the ins and outs of the last attack. It turned out the driver who wanted to kidnap them belonged to the same cult as the previous terrorist. That terrorist had already ended his own life in prison and never revealed the mastermind behind the scenes from beginning to end. It was said that the driver only started believing in that religion after his daughter fell ill. He also admitted he had deliberately lied that the road was blocked so he could lure Petumian to the hotel. The one most shaken by this incident was the butler. He had always been known for being strict in employing people. Yet the driver who had worked there for nearly 10 years had almost cost his employer his life. If it hadn't been for the secret device installed in the car, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The two of them exchanged a few polite remarks first. Before leaving, the butler told Yonu that Petumian had an urgent business trip these few days. Even the butler couldn't say for sure when he'd be back. When Yonu heard this, his heart still sank a little. But very soon, Emma came by and brought something even more explosive. This was probably the most humble top ever after going through a chasing wife crematorium arc. Truly second to none. He had managed to win his lover back, but then discovered not only could he no longer mark Yonu, Yonu might go and be marked by another alpha, and perhaps no longer loved him. The CEO, who had nothing but money, was so aggrieved on the spot that he actually burst into tears. Yonu, however, looked completely baffled. So this is the reason you've been avoiding me all this time? It turned out that when Emma heard that Yonu had come back, she went to the hospital to see him. And then, without meaning to, she let slip that Petumian was on leave. Yonu was even more confused. Didn't the butler say Petumian was on a business trip? Has Petumian been lying to him again? He forced down the impulse in his heart and decided he had to ask the butler and get this clear. Maybe only the butler actually knows where Petumian is. At first, the butler still tried to brush him off, so Yonu had no choice but to go all out. Tell me the truth. Does Petumian have someone new? If he really went to see someone else, that would actually be perfect. As it happens, there's someone I want to see too. Can you help me get in touch with him? I don't have a phone. It's not very convenient. But this move of Yonu's really worked. With no other option, the butler quickly gave in. Yonu, Mr. Petumian didn't go to see anyone. He went into heat. He couldn't hold out, so he went to the island. Yonu suddenly remembered what Petumian had said last time at the hotel, so he hadn't lied to him after all. But even an alpha who's been marked will damage his body if he tries to tough out a heat cycle. Why didn't he tell me? Why would he rather go through it alone? With the butler's help, Yonu boarded a helicopter and headed straight for that island. Petumian sat on the sofa, slowly sipping red wine, unable to hide his exhaustion and loneliness. Yonu's heart tightened. Should he be happy about this? Should he laugh at him? The person he had thought about day and night suddenly appeared before his eyes, and for a moment Petumian felt like he was dreaming. Why are you here? Yonu didn't hide anything either, and casually sold out his teammate. Kalsu, the butler, brought me here. Didn't you hear the sound of the helicopter? Clearly you have your own Omega, yet you still suffer through your heat alone like a pathetic alpha. Maybe you're the only one like that. That line of mockery hit the maximum. Yonu really deserved a 99 plus for that one. Petumian gritted his teeth and asked, "How did you know?" Yonu spoke very lightly. "I tricked it out of someone with my skills. Anyway, the lies I've told could already fill a truck. One more doesn't matter." Petumian was so angry he snapped, grabbed the wine bottle, and gulped it down. Yonu sighed helplessly. "You don't need to hide here. How much more are you going to drink? If you don't drink, will you be swallowed up by that awful loneliness, like a fool silently bearing it all alone?" Perhaps it was the alcohol at work. Emotions Petumian had suppressed for a long time suddenly exploded. Or should I just release my pheromones on you one more time right now and make you cry? Then you can take the chance to scheme against me and run away. That's exactly what you want, isn't it? This whole line of reasoning left Yonu completely dumbfounded. If he really hated Petumian, he wouldn't have come here at all. But Petumian only pulled out a bitter smile. And then you'll still end up leaving me behind once again. Yonu frowned in irritation. Fuck, you dumped me first, and now you expect me to turn around and comfort you? He just threw the words right out there. But unexpectedly, Petumian was still stuck on this one thing. I can't mark Yonu. Petumian had always believed that sooner or later, Yonu would have a change of heart and leave him. This time, Yonu finally stopped holding back and laid everything in his heart out on the table. Yeah, I used to hate you so much it drove me insane. Hated you so much I cried all the time. You hurt me so badly I even swore I never wanted to see you again. But wasn't that all because I loved you? Hurting and hurting others. Kissing, making up, holding each other tight so we're no longer alone. If that still doesn't count as love, then what is love supposed to be? So what exactly are you afraid of? I'm this torn up and I still haven't stopped loving you. So why do you keep running away? Honesty can really be ruthless, and Petumian finally began to face his own feelings. Yonu had said so much, and he heard every word. He finally responded to Yonu's love. I love you. All I can show you is money and resources, but that's not all of me. I'm afraid that one day you won't love me anymore.